This week on NWP, it's the evolution of Nerds Without Pants. And welcome to Nerds Without Pants, episode 92, the first of a new era. I am Julian, and I'm joined as always by Patrick.
Still here.
I guess that doesn't make it such a new era after all. And Angelo.
I want to make a Pokemon evolving joke, but I don't know Pokemon well enough to do that. So this was a really dumb way to introduce myself, but hi.
Yeah, you fail on 2 levels.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Sure do.
I'm all out of dust. I use my candy.
And returning champion, proving once and for all that what happens in Vegas does not stay in Vegas. We have site writer, rockstar company man, Street Fighter champion, JD.
Well, I guess the new era does begin with me after all.
That's correct.
Yes.
Damn, I didn't know that you won Evo.
I wish. Nah, I did pretty bad, but I mean, I did as good as I hoped I would do.
And we will talk about that because, yes, JD went to EVO 2016 and excited to talk to him about that and other stuff as well. And we got a lot of cool stuff happening in this episode and moving forward as well. But before anything, I just wanted to take a real quick moment to say, dude, I really appreciate everybody who listens to this show. I recently came into a situation at work where I'm no longer able to use my earbuds, so I can't listen to podcasts during work. So that meant that I had to cut things from like the 24 or something podcasts that I had subscribed down to about 8. And I'm barely keeping up with those as it is. So of course that meant that like I ended up having to cut the little guys, right? Because I'm not going to cut like the ones I've been listening to for years, like Giant Bomb or Rebel FM or The Comic Conspiracy. So a lot of like these new quirky shows that I'd gotten into, unfortunately had to go by the wayside. I mean, I kept a couple of them. Like I'm still listening to TNB. Those guys are great. I'm still listening to the Square Roots podcast, but, you know, by and large, like some of these like smaller guys, and I consider us the smaller guys, you know, they kind of fell by the wayside and makes me sad. So again, to those of you who listen to the show and even some of you who consider this one of your big shows, like, thank you so much. Like, thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the tweets. Thank you for spreading the word about us. Every little bit helps. And I guess more than ever, I'm just so appreciative of the people who take that extra effort to let us know that they're listening. Cause that's why we do this. We're trying not to talk into a vacuum. Although, I mean, it is fun to just like get together and talk every couple of weeks. But no, I mean, I know Angelo appreciates it. Patrick appreciates it. You know, it warms our hearts whenever we see those tweets come in or those comments come in. So from the bottom of my heart, like, thank you. And we actually have a couple, new iTunes reviews that I'll get to later. And some new participants in our segments. And one of those segments is a new addition to this episode. Very first edition of the Stage Select. So without further ado, let's roll over into the Stage Select. This is going to be the new segment that is going to open every episode, unless we have like a special thing going on. But for the most part, every episode of Nerds Without Pants from this moment forward will begin with this segment. And it's going to be a rotating topic every time. It's basically just going to be like a simple thing. I'm going to come up with the first few just to kind of establish a baseline and get the ball rolling, but eventually Patrick and Angela will be coming up with ideas too, and we'll kind of be springing them on each other, so we won't know what it is until we announce it. So eventually we get to a point where it's Angelo's turn to come up with something and we don't know what it is, and so then he'll let us know for the next episode. And it's again, just like our Chrono Crossing segment, it's intended to be an interactive thing. We didn't get a lot of input on this one yet, but I think it's because people are kind of figuring out what it's going to be. So, we'll kind of take the helm here. For this very first stage select, my topic was our top 5 games of all time, which Angelo's shaking his head and he's wringing his shirt in consternation and pulling his hair out because I've told him multiple times it's only 5. So here's the rules. It's 5 games of all time. However you determine that criteria is up to you. What we're going to do is we're going to go around the group, starting at 5 and go up to 1. Now, if somebody mentions a game that you have on your list, that's when you'll talk about it. So we're not going to so for example, if my number 5 game is JD's number 3 game, we'll talk about it right then, and then JD will just mention when he gets to 3, oh, well, mine was that game, and then we'll just move on. That way we're not, repeating ourselves too much. And so that way, I don't think we're actually going to have a lot of overlap in this particular topic, but later on we might. Yes, Angela.
No, I was going to say, I think you might be surprised.
We'll see. So I guess I will kick things off. Number 5 game of all time is the newest game on my list. And as I said before we started recording, I had to do some soul searching before I added it because my list has been pretty much locked in for about 10 years. So it's hard to chisel into that list. But if any game was going to do it, it was going to be the original Mass Effect. It is one of the most special games that I've ever played in the way that it affected me, the way that it had all this possibility. And even now, like every time that I finish Mass Effect, I start a new game of Mass Effect. Even if I don't continue playing it, I start a new character. And I have this backstory for him or her. It's like, oh, well, this version of Shepard is going to do this, 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 and this. And maybe he or she never gets to that point, but I like the idea of having that potential. And honestly, like, I was thinking about it a lot, recently because the new Star Trek, I feel, is very much like a Mass Effect movie. And I know the Mass Effect universe better than the Star Wars and Star Trek universes combined. That's how dialed into this lore I am. It's so deep. And it is derivative. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, they are pulling from the best of sci-fi, to combine the Mass Effect universe, but it's done in such a wonderful way. And the characters are just some of the most memorable that I've ever seen. And again, like, I put Mass Effect 1 over Mass Effect 2 because that combat, like, there's so many opportunities and possibilities in any given encounter that Mass Effect 2 and 3 just don't give you. So, that's my number 5.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Like, I was just, last night, like, sometimes I listen to music to help give me some zen so I can sleep. And the title screen music from Mass Effect 1 just got
so
me
beautiful.
There. Got me there.
It's funny too, cause, my lovely girlfriend Jenny has just started playing it, and, I'll hear her playing it in the morning before I wake up on the weekend. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the Normandy. It's so nice.
I don't know if it's the same thing you guys are talking about, but whatever plays while you're on the bridge looking at, like, the galaxy map, it's kind of like this super chill sci-fi.
Super evangelist style.
I love it. Like, I could let that play on loop in the background at work all day long and probably not get bored of it. It's fantastic.
Same here. JD, I'm surprised that one's not on your list.
It is. Like, the thing is, like, you said Mass Effect 1 specifically, and it's so hard for me to pick because, like, all 3 Mass Effect games are special to me for different reasons. But I think that for me, like, I have a Mass Effect on here, and, like, as you were saying 1, I was trying to decide which one I would mention, but it's later on my list. It's probably my number 3 or number 2. So
okay, well, then what's your number 5, and we'll go around to Patrick and Angela next.
All right, my number 5, as of right now, is Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time.
Okay.
And that's another difficult one. Yeah, because for me, in the Prince of Persia series, or at least the Prince of Persia games that started with that, it was between Sands of Time, Warrior Within, and then even outside of the Sands of Time trilogy, I was going to pick the 2008 version. because
I'm surprised that you didn't.
And this one kind of alternates. Like, I have a list that I did a few years ago that had the 2008 version instead, and then I kind of keep going back because I'm trying to say, well, where was the genesis of this, the mindset behind me picking Sands of Time, and where was the genesis of this, interest in the series and the genre. And Prince of Persia Sands of Time for me was the first game that I played of that type where, you had an interesting story with, fun combat, and you had unique mechanics. Like, what really sold me obviously was the time mechanics that it had, obviously. Reading in Game Informer about how you can like rewind time and freeze time, like that was just the coolest thing to me. And then, getting to run on walls and master the platforming and like, complete puzzles. Like, it was a change for me because previous, like in the, Sega Genesis and, N64 era of my gaming, I don't think I was a gamer, but with the GameCube, I became a gamer. And Sands of Time was one of those, first kind of deep cut games that I played that I really enjoyed. And, even though I think that like in the Sands of Time trilogy, I like Warrior Within the best. And in, overall, I think I like 2008 the best, but Sands of Time, I played the PS3 version recently, and I was still like, this game holds up. Like, you could play through this game and, most of it feels good, and the combat is, it was kind of Arkham before Arkham in a way.
Right.
And, the time mechanics are still satisfying. It's still a really good game. So that was my number 5.
I didn't play it a lot, but one of the things that I really loved about it was the story framing, the way that he's retelling his story. But then when you die, he's like, "Oh no, wait, that's not how it happened. Let me back up." And I thought that was so smart.
Yeah, it's great. And then the way it ties into the overall story too is just fantastic because, like, it's kind of a spoiler, but it's just at the end of the game. He, the whole thing is like that narration is because he's telling Farah that story. But when you finish, the Two Thrones, which is the third game in the series, he's also recapping it there as well. So it's hard to tell, like, you can infer that he could be telling you the whole thing,
nice.
From the first game. So it's interesting, but yeah.
I
very good.
I did play that game. I played that game a lot. Back when that game came out, I did not have a PS2. I had an Xbox. And so, I didn't have quite the library to choose from that I think everybody else did. And I'm not trying to say that as like a slight against it, but when that game came out, I was kind of like, probably not. And then a friend was like, no, you have to try this. You have to try this. You have to try this. So I tried it. And I love that game. It is very good. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I could see that making the cut. Sure.
Well, Patrick, how about you? What's your number 5?
Well, I played that. That was one of those games that I got not far enough in a rental, so I couldn't nearly put it up that high. But I totally understand it. It's from a great point in my nostalgic days with PS2. For 5, though, I went even more nostalgic, and I know I'm going to take the thunder away from Angelo and talk about Mega Man with Mega Man 2.
We're going to have a fight later on in this,
which one I
stage select.
Yeah.
You're a 3. Wait, Angelo, you're a 3 guy. Yeah, I think I'm a 3 guy too. But
okay, cool.
We're split. Hashtag Mega Man 2.
Yeah, like, interestingly, I finished Mega Man 2. I never finished 3, but I remember when I was playing 3, I was like, this game is better than 2. But and just to frame it, my first time playing those games was in the collection for GameCube.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
I was a little late, but it's just like I played 2, and then I loved 2 so much, I jumped right into 3, and I was like, wow, this game is better, in every way. But then I just never finished it. I think I got stuck in, the Wily Castle or something.
Yeah, it has a tough Wily Castle.
I think that's the difference in like how you're framing your top 5 though. Like, I had trouble that I have like 2 different top 5s for like most refined like 5 games of like that kind of genre or something like that, or like I have the most polished games. But for me, like, more than anything, there's a certain nostalgia for certain moments in your life where you play games. Like for me, Mega Man 2 was the first game I wrote passwords down, like on napkins and stuff, and like frequently like had entire sheets of just numbers randomly, like trying to beat this game as a kid growing up. And so there's nothing, even if the next one after that was a little bit better, number 2 was that momentous occasion when I had that light bulb go off as a platformer and be like, this is great. Sonic might be better than Mario. I didn't know what I was thinking.
We can have the 3 versus 2 discussion, but just remember this. 3 was actually the first one I played. I did not start with 2. And that may have something to do with it, because it does feel like a step back when you go from 3 to 2.
Yeah, and personal experience it has like plays so much into it, because for me, Mega Man 2 I just played so much. And I feel at 3 I didn't play it nearly as much. I think for whatever reason, I think I just rented Mega Man 2 more often. And so I'm just more familiar with it. So I mean I could play 3 now and maybe I could get back to and say, oh yeah, 3 is the better game, but 2 is still going to trump it for me just because there's so much nostalgia, for lack of a better term, like attached to it for me.
So there's a weird thing that happens too when you make steps, when you progress in technology. Like, I could put Mario 3 in front of my kids. I could put Mario World in front of my kids, and they would say, wow, these are really good. These are really fun games. But the original Super Mario Brothers, I'm serious. Like, that's a great game. And I can go back and I can play that game, and my wife and I can play that game and have a great time. And they're like, guys, they'll look at this and go, guys, this is garbage. You know what I mean? Because it's rough. It's old. There have been so many advancements that have come along that have led to games that are more refined, that when you go back, it seems a little rough. And I think that might be what colors my 3 versus 2, why I like 3 more.
You know what? That's probably why I put Mega Man 2, though, on the list and not Super Mario Brothers 3 or something like that. I wanted something that was not only early, like in the 2D platformer cycle, but also like refined enough where you could still play it today, I think. And I think Super Mario is a little bit harder to control the main character than maybe it is for Mega Man. Plus, it's like got a little bit more of a hardcore aspect to it.
So, Angelo, it was Mega Man 3 your number 5? Or
it's higher. It is higher on my list.
Okay, so what's your number 5?
I don't think anyone's going to argue with my number 5. It is also a platformer. It's one we have not discussed yet, but Super Metroid is maybe, that's top tier stuff. You know, I have played that game no less than 3 times through. No less.
3.
More than that, I'm sure. I just can distinctly remember 3 different times. It is probably the one game that led to a fist fight between me and my brother fighting over who was going to play it. I don't think I've ever punched anybody. Like, I've never punched him other than that, which is kind of crazy. There's a whole... Anyway. Let me just put it to you this way. He turned the game off on me, so then he took over the Super Nintendo and turned off the breaker to the living room.
He just kept escalated quickly.
So, yeah.
Well, I won't argue that, Angelo, other than the fact that it's so low on your list, because Super Metroid is actually number 1 on mine.
Okay. Whoa! I see that.
And it's been there, like, for 15 years, which is probably the first time that I actually made a list like that.
I don't know if we've ever talked about this. I had no idea. Maybe I had just forgotten.
It is...
we probably haven't.
It just beat out Symphony of the Night for my number 5 spot. But it's not...
Oh, yeah.
It is not... I think I favor more precision platformers. And this is a great game, don't get me wrong, over the Metroidvania types. And it does have some precise platforming, but it doesn't feel like that was the focus of the game. It feels like the focus of the game is more about exploration and a lot of combat, really. Which is fine.
Yeah, I almost wouldn't call it a platformer.
Right. Only because of the 2D and it's got a lot of jumping.
Right, right. Oh, good, JD.
No, I was just going to say, and the jumping in Super Metroid, I would say, going back to it, I played Super Metroid a little bit later than some of the more recent ones. I played it after Fusion and Zero Mission and stuff, and while I was able to get used to it, and, trust me, I love Super Metroid, what the advancements that they did make it feel more valid as a platformer, Whereas Super Metroid was like very floaty and it's harder to be precise, I feel, in some ways, unless you get really good at the feel of the game.
Well, I think that the floatiness is by design because it gives you so much room to course correct in midair, because some of those jumps are literally like, I'm going to do this weird snaky thing in midair to get up to this platform where I shouldn't be able to do that. Like, I'm going to play with physics in this bizarre way. But no, I feel that it is the closest thing to the perfect game that you can get. The mood that it sets, the way that game starts, and the way it teaches you things without teaching you things it was light years ahead of anything. Like, before tutorials and stuff like that, Super Metroid did these subtle little things that would teach you how to play the game. Like, one of my best examples is where you learn the wall jump.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing in the game that tells you how to wall jump. You end up in a pit that you can't get out of, and there's these little bitty critters that are wall jumping up this shaft, and you're like, okay, monkey see, monkey do. Mm-hmm. And so you try to jump out, and you can't. And then you realize, oh wait, she kind of clings to the wall a little bit. And then I can, press away, and she kind of looks like she's gonna, she's motioning away. And then you realize, and it clicks. And there's so many little moments like that. Yeah. And of course, I mean, the soundtrack is possibly my favorite video game soundtrack of all time. No,
it's so good.
I would say it's also the best looking Super Nintendo game.
Yep.
I would accept other games, but I would fight you for them.
I would argue that it's the best looking one we got in the States. I would say maybe Tales of Fantasia would edge it out, but we never get that one over here, so.
What about ActRaiser?
Oh, it blows ActRaiser away.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
I mean, the sense of scale on the bosses, and even like just the little details. The fact that this was like a 2D sprite game, but Samus's gun arm stays consistent. Like, she turns around and it's on the correct arm all the time, where most of the time it would just be a mirrored sprite. Like, little things like that, the way that she turns and you actually see the front, like, it's a complete turn animation. Like, that's stuff that they didn't do back then, and they don't even do now with 2D games because it's really expensive.
You know what? I think that's the first game that I imagined like a lady when I was playing it. I really wanted to undress her.
Patrick, we're gonna get letters now, man.
I mean, I'm just trying to tell you it helped me become a man. So.
And wait, you're not a guy?
Is that a problem, you fuck?
No, prepare to die!
You liked that death animation a little too much, didn't you?
It was like, I would imagine it way more than it was, because when I was actually playing the game, I would realize, it still was a sprite, but like, then I would go home from my friend's place and, have dreams.
We need to move on.
All right, well, moving on to my fourth game. So I meant to mention earlier, but the way that I approached my list was games that I can enjoy just as much now as I did the first time that I played them. And for me, that has to be a Street Fighter. There has to be one on my list. And my favorite Street Fighter right now, because it might change. I need to get further away from it, but Super Street Fighter 4 might end up being my favorite Street Fighter game of all time. But I need more time. I need more distance from it. But for right now, it's Street Fighter Alpha 3. Nice. It's the roster, it's the graphics, it's the combo system. It's the Street Fighter that I've probably spent more time in, like, overall. I mean, I've probably spent hundreds of hours on Street Fighter Alpha 3. And also, it's the game where I've talked about this before on the show, I think when we were talking about arcade games, but it's the Street Fighter where I ended up switching from Ken and Ryu to Blanca and Balrog and DJ. And those became like my dudes, and Blanca has carried over to be my main guy since. Like, so that was like a big change for me. And, it's one of my favorite Street Fighter announcers. Like, it's just top to bottom. Like the way they tried to flesh out the story too, which has always been like one of the weak points of Street Fighter, but they went like a really long way to try to, establish the early days of these characters, and it's just fun. And then you have all the different isms that you can play with. One of my favorite things to do is pick Guile, pick V-ism, and then just juggle people with flash kicks over and over and over and over. Like, it's just a really excellent Street Fighter game.
Nice.
I'm glad to see it make your list. I don't know where to fit a fighting game on my list though, compared to like other types of games. It's weird because like, how do you judge that versus a platformer? It's hard for me.
Yeah. And like I said, mine is just more of like, games that I still have that same, like, for example, so Street Fighter Alpha 3 is one of those games where if I have access to my PlayStation, it's one of the first games that gets popped in. So that's kind of a good barometer for it. And that'll actually bleed into my third game when I get there. But, JD, what's your number 4?
All right, so number 4 was tough for me as well. And it was between 3 different RPGs, but, I decided to go with Tales of Vesperia. If anyone who's been listening to, or, visiting Pixelbit for a long time will know my love affair with Tales of Vesperia. And, I picked Prince of Persia Sands of Time to pick the beginning of my, platformer or, action platformer love affair. But Tales of Vesperia, while not the first Tales game I played, was easily the one that I liked the most. And it was mainly due to, like, the main character, Yuri. He's easily just like, he was my introduction to Troy Baker 1. So,
nice.
I was like, this guy is cool. He sounds cool. And then not only that, but he just emanated something different. Like most Japanese RPGs, like, have main characters that, are very predictable and they're stoic and they're friendly. And Yuri, he was a little bit more of a roguish type. And he, like Flynn, who was a character, like, that was kind of his foil, I guess, throughout the game. He was more of the traditional JRPG protagonist, and Yuri was more of the, the guy that, traditionally would be the, the one that you would fight throughout the game or something like that. But here you're playing as that guy, and he's making decisions that you wouldn't necessarily assume a main character would make. And I thought that was interesting, at least for me, because, I don't play a crap ton of JRPGs, but for me it was like different and it was new. And on top of that, the combat engine is just one of the most fun that I've ever played, just because it's so much like a fighting game in a way, just because of how much it emphasizes combos and utilizing your skills. And, you have to work for it, because, like, your first playthrough, you have tools to do cool things, but you don't really get the access to the best things until you beat the game and you're on New Game Plus and you're unlocking, pretty much making yourself broken. And the more broken you get, the more fun it gets. So, like, I played that game about 4 or 5 times through, one of them being a speed run because there was an achievement for it. And, it was just, like, easily some of the most fun I've had playing a JRPG. Like, I think I put altogether around 300 hours into it. I know, like, there was a PS3 version that I almost bought that was supposed to come out here. That was a director's cut that had even more stuff, but obviously it was only in Japanese. And I'm still considering buying it just to have it in my collection, because, they have it at Video Games New York, but, I've kind of been being cheap about it for some reason. But either way, like, that game really meant a lot to me. And one of the most special things about that game to me, just, as a personal thing, is that the day that I got my first achievement in that game and the day that I got my last achievement in that game are the same day, 1 year exactly.
Nice.
Apart. And it wasn't planned. It wasn't planned like that. Like, I just happened to, like, when I got my last achievement, I was just gazing at it, and then I was like, wait, and then I went back to the first one, and I was like, hold on, this is the same exact day. Like, it was crazy. So that was like, okay, yeah, this is awesome.
That game is sitting on my Xbox 360 hard drive, and I have my fingers crossed it'll end up being backwards compatible, because I want to play it, but it's one of those things where, since it's a digital game, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind for me with those. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be a little bit more in my face. And if it's on my Xbox One on that backwards compatible list, then I'll be like, oh yeah, let me go ahead and install this and finally jump into it. Yeah, but I'm not surprised that you picked that one.
Speaking of in your face and like back handheld and stuff like that, there's a lot of talk about the new Nintendo handhelds, as well as Sun and Moon recently with Pokemon Go. And I'm wondering how everyone here is feeling, because I got 2 friends who bought the new 3DS, and I got a couple friends who started Pokemon X and Y recently due to Pokemon Go, and I like Pokemon Go. It's fun. I'm already losing I'm losing the fad hype a little bit, but like it's still, I think, going to stick with me. Where I go to a new area, I'm going to have to pop it open.
That topic that discussion would turn Stage Select into an entire podcast by itself.
We'll definitely talk a little bit about Pokemon Go later because it's a thing. It's interesting.
It's a thing I'm not into because I know if I got into it, we'd have a problem.
I mean, you could be moderately into it. You just have to have
not me.
some semblance of self-control.
All right.
Well, Patrick, what's your number 4?
Ooh, well, my number 4 I had a problem with because it's like, do I pick the more refined one that I played more? So I did go with that because I have to pick games in the end that I did beat, and
you don't have to.
Well, for me, I thought I should. I don't know. I went with that in the end. Why I picked StarCraft 2 over StarCraft 1.
Okay.
I think
that is a shocking pick. Like, well, I don't think I've ever heard you mention StarCraft at all.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, you probably don't even know that part of me. But
tell me about this part of me, Patrick.
I mean, I have my MacBook Pro, and like the only game that I ever play on it is StarCraft 2, and I have been playing that since like the day it came out. My name is just Light because like I was like the first person to I put that. I guess you have to have a unique name in StarCraft, and I'm really excited to have like a good one because you have to like put numbers and stuff after sometimes, and I don't have that. But the first one, like I played more like on N64, it sucked, but like that was my first really inclusion into the RTS genre, and I beat the main story and really like the Protoss, and I didn't really play competitively with the first one, but I had friends and like watched them and stuff like that, and just like the general lore. I didn't have it on PC like I did with the second one. That was one that I got like soon after I graduated college. Like in the three months that I lived like on High Street after I was graduated and before I was going to go back to Chicago, I got to live in Iowa, and that came out, and I like was only playing that like the entire day for like a 3-month period at least. But like it went over into my life as an adult for a good year and a half. And I don't really know what else I played during that time because I don't really think I did play anything else. And for me, that's like the mark of a great game. A game that I would get back into at any instant. I do have like up to Heart of the Swarm and stuff like that, and I still have to beat those. But the thing is, like, my computer is really screwing up right now, and I can't even see my laptop the right way. So when these new laptops come out, oh man, I'm gonna play that game so much that I will get post-traumatic stress syndrome from it, just like I do from the original StarCraft 2. And that's why I picked the second one out of the first, because I have PTSD.
Well, I feel bad for the PTSD, but that's an interesting pick. Like, I have StarCraft 2. I actually got it for free when a friend of mine was working at Blizzard for the call center. She got like this nice welcome basket. It was like one of the World of Warcraft expansion, like collector's editions, and like a figure, and then StarCraft 2. And she's like, I don't want StarCraft 2. You can have it. But I haven't installed it yet, and I want to, cause it looks really cool. I'm crap at RTS games. I need to be able to like stop and think forever before I decide.
You know what? The biggest problem with RTSs though is the control scheme, because think of, and your interface, because you don't get to see the entire board, but it's just like a board game that's interactive that you don't get to see the entire map of at some time. If you think about it, like, what I'm really excited for is like virtual reality and this, like having a hand on or something like that, where you get to control your units like with your fingertips or something while you're looking in a virtual reality headset, where you get the entire screen of the battlefield like at your every whim, and you can magnify it where you want to, and you can zoom out and stuff. That'll be so much better. And I think a lot more people, it'll be intuitive to them instead of having to like think about what buttons you're pressing on the QWERTY pad.
There was a Xbox 360 RT. I think it was an RTS. I don't think it was turn-based. I didn't play it. I'm sorry. So this is me shooting from what I've read about it, but also my brother played it. I bought it for him and he really liked it. Called Ruse. which I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And it did have that where you could like pull a trigger and it would zoom all the way out of the map. One of the cool things it did was the further you got out, the more abstract everything became until you were looking at like one of those war boards they had where it was like pieces on a grid.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the original marketing trailer was it was basically like two people playing like a board game, but then it became the RTS to where I was actually confused as to what it was supposed to be.
That was done a little bit better than the original Supreme Commander. I think was the first one that let you pull out all the way to like a board game kind of atmosphere, but it was more like Settlers of Catan even. You just had so many units at one time, and Supreme Commander 2 was better at it, but like it was toward the tail end of a certain cycle of computer games where a lot of people didn't get into it because it was right before another leap in graphics technology and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Angelo, well, how about you, number 4?
Probably not going to be another shock. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. That is my number 4.
No, it's a little bit of a shock for me.
For me, really? You know, that's a shock for you guys?
No, I thought that would be the one you'd put on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I didn't expect a Zelda to be on your list.
I like Zelda games. The modern ones I don't really like so much. I like the older ones.
He's a Nintendo man, though.
Well, from my childhood, yes. You know, I grew up with a NES and a Super Nintendo. So, these were the games, man. This game is great. And I think one of the things about this was I was of an age where I was actually... The original Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2 to an extent, just because my brain couldn't wrap my head around all of it, was a lot of talking to people, looking at guides, that sort of thing. This was the first one where I solved it all myself. You know what I mean? Nobody helped me. Yeah. Nobody told me to figure out. There were parts where I got stuck for hours. And then I figured it out. And just the level of elation you get from that, where it's like, oh my gosh, I solved this thing. And, you know, that. And I've gone back and played it quite a bit. More so than even Super Metroid. But that is definitely one of my favorite games. And
I've never finished it.
Huh?
I've never finished it. Like most Zelda games, I've never finished it.
Oh, wow.
I rented it, and I got to this dungeon that I was stuck in, and then I had to return it, and I own it, but I actually have not played the cartridge that I own, and one of these days I will amend that. Once this game room gets fully operational, I'll definitely try to play it all the way through.
But yeah, it's up there. It is my number 4, so.
Excellent.
My number 3 is probably going to surprise you a little bit too, but the first 2 aren't going to.
Well, I was surprised by Zelda.
Oh,
so
cool.
Now my number 3 will probably surprise everybody, just because it's almost like a dark horse. Because even for the Nintendo, like even for Nintendo as a company, like they don't really acknowledge this game very often. But again, going back to games that I can enjoy as much now as I did the first time that I played it. And again, a game that anytime that I'm playing my old Nintendo, I have to put this in and play it. It's Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is one of the first Nintendo games that I ever played. Glass Joe kicked my ass multiple times because that's how bad I was at video games, because I didn't understand how to play them, at all. Like I didn't understand the cues that were going on, like the signals that he was giving, like the flow of the combat. But, everything about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and I say Mike Tyson because Mr. Dream is fine, but like the coolness factor of having Mike Tyson in your game, and I've never beaten Mike Tyson. I can get to Mike Tyson, pretty easily. I have never lasted one round against the man. To this day.
Really? You didn't beat it?
No.
Why?
Wow. I can't. Like, my claim to fame on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is that I have beaten Super Macho Man without taking a hit. But Mike Tyson just as true to life, like just mops the floor with me in a couple punches.
So why is he so hard? I thought it was not that hard.
No, because Mike Tyson is cheap in that game. That's why.
He's super fast. Like, yeah. And the cues are very quick. Like, even as a kid, like, the reflexes weren't there. I can't even imagine now as an adult, like, being able to do it. I've also heard that just because, and going back to, like, the way the Atari was programmed, that playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on modern televisions, puts you at a disadvantage against Mike Tyson because certain cues I guess they don't time quite as right or as precisely as they did on a CRT.
No.
So there's that
Yeah,
as
you're
well.
absolutely right. There's a delay that gets put in there. If you emulate it and you play it like on a PC, the timing is usually right. But honestly, if you play it on a modern TV, there's input lag because of all the transitions the signal has to go through to get to the HD TV. It's really weird. But yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people actually.
If you ever have an extra couple hours or whatever, Giant Bomb's Dan Reichert, before he was on Giant Bomb, he was at Game Informer and he did about 2 or 3 hour-long episodes of him trying to beat Mike Tyson. Now, since then, he has beaten Mike Tyson off camera a couple of times, and he has proof and whatnot. But if you want to see something hilarious, and also just want to see how hard Mike Tyson is, just watch those. Yeah, it's entertaining.
Yeah, I need to watch that because I remember Dan on the Bombcast like a year ago or so on a quest to finally do it because he'd never done it. Patrick, so did you beat him? Like, were you surprised that I couldn't do it? Or
I thought it wasn't that hard, but I had like memories of like the game in my friend's basement, and I thought we had beaten it. But is there like maybe a different type of Punch Out that I beat? Because I don't think that I had beaten one of the hardest games ever.
I mean, you very well could have. I mean, I know that people have done it. It's just that I
beat Battletoads by myself, but like I couldn't beat it with like 2 people. I don't know.
No, see, Battletoads doesn't have an ending, Patrick, because you get to that 3rd level with the motorcycles, and that's the end of the game. Yeah, it's
so much harder with the second person. It's easier like with 1 person in Battletoads, but
yeah, it just sucks that you had to pay $50 for a 3 or a 2.5 level game because that's all of that is. That's all that's on the cartridge. Patrick.
Spoilers, it's not on my list.
There's nothing else.
There's nothing else.
No, I beat that level though. I didn't beat the whole game because there is more after that.
No, I refuse to believe that. That game ends halfway through that motorcycle level.
Yeah, no, I got into a fight with my friend over that because he was like, "You didn't beat that. No one could beat that." And then I beat it like by myself, and then we tried to do it together the entire day, and we couldn't do it.
It's harder co-op.
That's how it is. Yeah,
it's actually harder co-op than it is solo.
It's fucked up. Yeah, they didn't test that like they should have. But I feel like I didn't test my theory on me beating my Punch Out. I don't think I could have if it sounds that hard.
I mean, you were kind of a Nintendo savant too, though. Like you beat Mega Man 2 when you were like in diapers or something like that. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you very well may have.
That was my whole life. I have, you didn't have a brother, sister either.
No.
So,
but Mike Tyson is kind of like my gaming holy grail as far as like, doing. Maybe one day I'll do it, but somehow I doubt it.
I feel like you can.
I'll just pump some Rocky tunes and see what happens.
Yeah.
JD, what's your number 3?
All right, so I've made my decision on which Mass Effect I picked for number 3, and it's Mass Effect 3.
I thought for sure it would be 2.
So, 2 is obviously the popular one amongst a lot of people, but Mass Effect 3 definitely had issues in terms of not having I would say my biggest personal issues with it were the way that the side quests were handled, because the side quests were pretty much crap in Mass Effect 3. And, the first time, the ending and the amount of denial and, me becoming a crazy person, like becoming an indoctrination theorist for like 2 months after Mass Effect 3.
Oh yeah, you were one of those people. I remember.
I was heavy into, I was wrapped up in it for a while until I just snapped out of it. And the guy I was following on YouTube, watching all of his videos, I was like, this guy is just crazy. And then I was like, I just snapped out of it. But, the reason I picked 3-1 is because the amount of emotion that I felt as I played Mass Effect 3 in general, just really, there's not a lot that I can compare it to, just because there was a lot of closure throughout the game. Maybe not necessarily at the end, but I haven't really experienced a game trilogy where, you really felt like you went on this ride with all these characters and saw, all these different things happen. And it was still like just a, fantastic ride, like an unforgettable one too. And the other reason I put it at the top was because I felt like, between Mass Effect 1 and 2, I can't even really compare it to the first one because the first one was so different, but the gameplay was just a lot smoother to me. And the multiplayer, I spent maybe just as much, if not more time playing the multiplayer, as the regular game. Just because it was like me and my friends got completely addicted to the multiplayer, and, that kind of helps it edge out too. Just the amount of fun I had playing the game, like the actual game itself. But, Mass Effect 3 definitely, just edged out too because of those little aspects. But, it's hard to pick any Mass Effect over the others for me, just because each one really had different aspects. Like, because 2 was all about the characters and those character journeys, and those made, that was, what made 2 great. And 1, it just was the most unique, and it had the most different feel, and it actually was an expansive RPG in a lot of ways. And that's why I liked 1 a lot. And it was just this introduction to this universe that was just so vast, and Mass Effect is one of the only pieces of fiction that I wanted to get into the extended fiction of. So it's I got the novels and I started reading the novels, and I got the comics and I started reading some of those, and I actually would sit there and read the lore, not because I felt like I had to, but because I wanted to.
Absolutely.
And, like you said, I know those, those races and those characters more than I know Star Wars and Star Trek and all that. But 3, I just felt, wrapped it up for me in a satisfying way. And, with all the DLC, like the Citadel DLC and all that, it justified the rocky, ending it had initially. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I echo everything that you say on Mass Effect 3, and even for me, and I've said it before, I was fine with the original ending. Mm-hmm. I think also because I knew that there was not going to be anything that game could do to make a satisfying ending, especially since Mass Effect 1 and 2 also have bad endings. But that was never the reason that I played those games. When I say ending, I mean that that last cutscene on all 3 of those games is kind of crap, but the moments leading up to that last cutscene is always incredible. And for me, Mass Effect 3 isn't that ending. Mass Effect 3 is, me on a rooftop with Garrus, talking for the last time. Me getting drunk with Tali.
When not Rex, Grunt, when Grunt, was still alive after that whole battle. I stood up and cheered in my room. There's not many video games that made me do that.
Yeah, it's those character moments and those story moments, and, it's got some pacing problems, and I would argue that the beginning of Mass Effect 3 is the problem, not the ending. But yeah, I'm surprised you picked that one, but I like Mass Effect 3 because I think it splits the difference pretty well between 1 and 2, in the sense of the gameplay and the RPG elements. So, excellent pick. What's your number 3?
Well, I would just first like to say that I can't put any Mass Effect on my list because of what happened.
Right. Your buggy save on Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, but I guess I needed a Mario game on my list, and I think 3 is no surprise that Super Mario 64 was gonna get in there somehow, because that's the first game that I think I collected absolutely everything, and it had so many things to collect, and I needed every little secret, and it took months for me to do by myself without any internet, and it'll be one of those journeys that I went on, and it was one of those that like a couple of friends tried to make and couldn't make, but I made. And it was, one of the original. I need to have all these things I had to collect. So definitely number 3.
Nice. That one is always like one of my favorite Game Fellas stories, where a guy came in and he was adamant that like Super Mario 64 is like a 50-hour long game or something like that, like to get all 120 stars. And I was like, no, I think it was more like 10, maybe 15. And he's like, no way. And I was like, yeah, I beat that game the week that it came out. Like I had, it came out on a Sunday and I had it beaten the following Sunday.
Yeah.
He's like, with all 120 stars? And I was like, yeah. He's like, there's no way. And I was like, no, yeah. And I asked my friend Joe, I was like, hey Joe, how long did it take you to get all 120 stars on Mario 64 the first time? And he's like, I don't know, like 10 hours? And the guy was just apoplectic. He was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, and see, I was a kid at the time, so like I was still getting like my hands around the idea of a camera and controlling that and the character at the same time. So it was still hard for me to just platform. And then
we all were.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's true. But that also like coincides with me getting the 64 in general, and I've got video of me being like that kid on the 64 commercial where he's like jumping around like and throwing his own shoulder into the ground, just jumping with the system. And Mario was the game that I got with it. After 3 months, my parents telling me from my birthday all the way to Christmas that we didn't have any money and would never get it, and then Santa gave it to me. That was the best.
Nice. Angelo, what is your number 3? This shocking number 3.
This is why I think it's surprising. But once I start to kind of unravel,
Nier.
Nope. Here's going to be the big surprise. Nier's not on this list.
Wow, I'm actually surprised.
Well, I'm not surprised at that, because you had to like fit like 3 Etrian Odyssey games.
There are no Etrian Odyssey games on this list.
Okay, now I'm surprised.
Those made it like right. They're in the top 10,
game?
but they're not the top slots. So hold on. This is something you guys probably didn't know about me, but I was really into first-person shooters like right up through college. I played a lot of Counter-Strike. Played a lot of Half-Life. And getting back to like when I was a kid, I played a lot of Wolfenstein. I played a lot of Descent. I played Blakestone, for goodness sake. You guys even know what that is?
No, what's that?
Blakestone it fell kind of after Wolfenstein, but before the game that is my number 3.
I feel like it shouldn't be a surprise, because like it's literally been the only thing that we've talked about for like the last 4 episodes.
So I'm not talking about the new one. I'm talking about the classic
I know,
original Doom.
Well, yeah, but remember, I was playing original Doom before the new Doom, and then I got the new Doom, and then you started playing Brutal Doom. Like, it's just been the Doom podcast for the last, like,
and
few
I
months.
would love to talk about Doom.
I feel so out of place.
But, yeah, I mean, I've gone back and played Doom, the original Doom, and Doom 2, but more so the original Doom, more times than any other video game on this list. I'm not kidding. And I know that sounds really weird, but...
No,
okay, cool. Well, probably because people who listen to this don't think of me as, like, the FPS guy. You know what I mean? I'm kind of not, because modern FPSs don't usually do it for me, although Doom does. The new one does. And you know, I haven't written off Quake 4, I just haven't played it yet. Doom 3 didn't.
Right.
Halo was good. Halo was very, very good, but it never reached, like, that echelon of... It never got up to the level of, like, the classics for me. But it was a very good game.
Now, are you emphasizing more the multiplayer aspect of it when you're thinking of putting this game in the list, or is it because the single player? Because I think that's why I didn't put any first-person shooters on my list, and it made me really hard. It's the same thing with fighting games. It's really hard to judge them compared to everything.
No,
and
the campaign for the original Doom was like nothing I'd ever seen before when it came out, and it still has some of the best design levels I've seen in video games. They hold up tremendously well. Even in like
I've played one match of multiplayer Doom in my life.
It's not that good. Okay. I hate to say this, but even when it came out, it was revolutionary. Sure, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't that great. We didn't really have good competitive first-person shooters until Unreal Tournament and Quake 3. We didn't. That's true.
See, I was like, I wanted to put one of those on the list too because I played so much Counter-Strike back in the day, and now I'm so into Overwatch that I know it's like one of the best games of all time, and it'll be here for like years and years to come. But like, I don't know how that compares to a platformer where you're like jumping around, which like to me is like the most pure aspect of a game, like jumping and collecting.
And Doom is weird in a way where it sort of feels. I don't want to say it feels like a precision platformer because it doesn't. But one of the things that Julian mentioned, especially when I played it originally, is it took out the verticality of aiming your shots. You just had to aim them horizontally, left to right. If they were anywhere on the vertical plane, you hit them. So it became more of just line up your shot real quick, shoot, get out of the way, because there's a fireball coming right for your face, you know? And that was how you played the original Doom. So, but look at modern cover shooters. Look at, like, so many things grab that and put it somewhere else where it all comes back to this original game. And this original game does it so well even now. So, I think it holds a pretty solid number 3, honestly.
Yeah, I asked you because I know you're the platforming guru of our podcast too, so.
Yeah, I don't think my first-person shooter skills have held up all that much. Mostly because I just don't have the time to dedicate to it. First-person shooters are something that you have to play a lot to stay on top of.
Gotta get vertical.
They're like fighting games almost. And I just don't do it anymore. But this, as a classic campaign, holds up very, very well.
Definitely. I'm still going to go back and finish my playthrough of the original Doom on normal. I'm in the last episode, or last episode, I just need to finish those levels, but, well, the cat was already out of the bag on my number 1 game, so by process of elimination, anybody who listens to this podcast knows that my number 2 game has to be a Final Fantasy game. Because there's no way that I'm doing a top 5 of all time without having a Final Fantasy. The only question is, which one?
6.
No!
What?
4.
It is 4.
Okay.
So, here's my thing, and actually this kind of goes back to the Mega Man argument, and it's also my argument about Empire and Return of the Jedi. I will freely admit that Empire Strikes Back is the better film, but Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah, right.
Similarly, I will freely admit that Final Fantasy VI is the best Final Fantasy. Like, objectively the best in the series. It is a masterpiece. But Final Fantasy IV is my favorite for so many reasons, one of which is that it is the first Final Fantasy game that I played a lengthy amount of. I played 1 briefly at a friend's house, but 4 was the one that I sunk a bunch of time into. But for so many reasons, the characters, like the huge roster, the way that you have the 5 people in your party, the fast pace of the ATB system, because that was the first time that they did that. The music, the sprite, the sprite art, like even to this day, like I can look at Final Fantasy IV's original sprite art and say, this looks really great for it coming out in 1992. Like I can put myself back in there and say, like, this is still really impressive.
The music was insanely impressive in 92, too.
Yes.
Like, just going from what we had, no matter where you were in video games, to what Final Fantasy 4/2 brought to the table in 1992. Across the board, it was a very impressive game. In size, in scope, in tactical, in what it brought to the table as far as tactics went. Musically, I mean, yeah.
I had recently, when I unpacked all my games, I had taken a picture of all of my Final Fantasy collection. And I forgot to count how many copies of Final Fantasy IV I own, but I own all of them except for the Wonder Swan. And I actually need I need a American version of the Super Nintendo cart because I don't have that anymore.
Oh, wow.
But I own everything else. I have the Super Famicom cart. I have, the GBA one. I have the DS one. I have the PSP one. And I've also bought the Super Nintendo cartridge multiple times. Like, the number of times that I've bought Final Fantasy IV is probably second only to the number of times that I've bought Resident Evil 1.
Yeah. I mean, my order of play is a little weird on this one, too, because I went from 1, which I played a lot, to 6, or 3, and then back to 4/2.
Yeah. Which can be a little bit difficult, like, because 6 is just, on a different level.
Now looking back critically at when it came out and what it did, I mean, the freaking story it told, for goodness sake. Gaming hadn't seen anything like that before. It hadn't.
You're talking about 4 or 6? Okay,
Six definitely kicked it up a notch and a half, but I'm just saying, like, 4, when it came out, it was like, there's these characters with relationships that are communicating with each other. I almost want to say, prior to Final Fantasy IV, the only communication that happened in the game was communicating to the player, not really necessarily
pretty
characters
much,
having their own personalities and then communicating to each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and having characters like constantly die or leave your party forever or become unable to continue. Just very. People now call it like just like kind of sappy melodrama, but at the time, like that was very impactful, heart wrenching stuff.
And it's weird because previous to that game, I don't know if a Final Fantasy game, and I know we only got one, but if you look at the other two, I don't think any of them died, because I know in Final Fantasy 2, no, they didn't die in 2. No, they did not die in 3.
No, 2 has characters constantly
Does
die.
It? Not.
Like, because remember, you have 3 main characters, and there's a rotating 4th spot, and the 4th character keeps dying. To the point that the Dawn of Souls, on Game Boy Advance actually has a bonus, addition of, or bonus episode where you're in the afterlife playing as the 4 dead characters as a party.
Oh, wow. No, see, I didn't get far enough in 2 to really know. I know 4 you can't, because that was the first time they did the job system, and they can't have you. I guess they could have one character die and then do the cheesy thing where they replace it with another character that had the exact same stats. But they didn't. But then, like, when 4 came out, it was just like, they actually were not just blank, soulless characters. They had personalities, and you got to know them, and it's like, oh yeah, did you like these 2 people? These cute little twins? They're going to turn themselves to stone to save you. Sorry.
And you'll never see them again.
Ouch.
Until the end.
What did you think about the DS remake? Like, did you?
I thought it was great. It's just super hard.
I didn't play it.
Yeah, because like
it's super duper hard.
Yeah, because like the DS remake was my first time experiencing it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But then I know my brother and my friend got to the end, and they told me that the difficulty spike was ridiculous, and that kind of deterred me from finishing my playthrough. But yeah, that game is definitely worthy of being on a list. Like, I was, when you said your favorite, for some reason I thought it would be 4, because I feel like 4 is, while it's not necessarily forgotten, it's kind of, when you discuss it, it's either, 6 or 7, or the hipsters pick 9, but 4 usually gets left out, so.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Well, what's your number 2, JD?
So number 2 is Pokemon Red /Blue/Yellow. And I count them as slashes because they're all technically the same game. But yeah, those games were the beginning of my hardcore gaming life, or my full descent into geekdom, I guess. Because, up until then, yeah, like, I was into a lot of stuff, like, but, I wanted to, I thought I wanted to be in the NBA. I thought I wanted to play hockey. Like, I thought I wanted to play all these different sports, but, and I played video games, but not really seriously. But Pokemon happened, and then I was like, I just want to keep doing this. And
so wait. So Pokemon literally stopped you from being athletic, is what you're telling me right now.
Well, not necessarily, because I still played sports and stuff throughout.
With you.
Yeah. But it's just like
Pokemon Go's trying to give back.
But, no, to be honest, I never stopped playing Pokemon. Like, I've been a Pokemaniac since the first time I ever played it. And, like, it's just, like, the amount that the series means to me is kind of crazy, because I have been playing it so long, like, it's been part of, my entire being. So that's why, it's interesting to see this Pokemon Go phenomenon, just to see how it affected different people. And, I'm one of the people that never stopped playing Pokemon. So for me, Pokemon Go is like, it's a cool thing, but I still prefer the actual games, because that's where I get the most enjoyment out of them. But, all these people who played Gen 1, maybe Gen 2, and then stopped playing, and then they're playing it now, it's kind of bringing it back into the limelight in a way that I didn't anticipate, and it's still cool, just in a completely different way. But Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, like, I bought the Virtual Console version of Pokemon Blue, and I was playing on 3DS, and that game held up surprisingly well. Like, I was surprised by, because usually when you go back to play an old Game Boy game, you expect a lot of jank, you expect a lot of, stuff that you're like, oh yeah, this doesn't really age well. And while, like, the original Pokemon games do have, there's obviously been progression made to make those games easier to play. For example, in the original games, you only had 20 item slots. And if you, filled it up, then you couldn't pick up any items. So you had to constantly go to the PC to, unload your unimportant items so you could pick up new stuff. And, you couldn't run, so you're always walking. And, like, there were things that I thought would annoy me that didn't annoy me nearly as much as, I expected. Like, the running thing I thought I was going to hate because, in the newer games you can run, you can skate, you have bikes, and the normal walking speed is just generally faster. But here, it didn't bother me at all. And, just going through that region is just full of nostalgia. Like, the first time you get into, not Safari Zone, Viridian Forest, and, hearing the music, and, I was, like, still remembering certain little things that I used to do. Like, I would search in, like, specific areas of grass just to find a Pikachu so you could catch one early. Or, where some secret items were, and, like, at the end of the game, I made sure I did the missing no glitch just to do it over again, just to prove to myself that I still remembered how to do it. And, like, finding where the Tauros were in the Safari Zone, like, because, like, that Pokemon was always, like, elusive to me when I was a kid. And it, it was just like, it was a journey, and it's like, I tried to do a hybrid team of Pokemon that I raised so, like, in my very first playthrough of Pokemon, I had a certain team that was really weird and not necessarily cohesive. But I remember after I beat the game, I didn't understand that you could continue playing, so I just deleted my save and started a new game. But I still generally remember that team, because I started with a Bulbasaur, and I had, like, some, like a Wigglytuff and a Clefable and an Aerodactyl, like, just weird stuff, like Pokemon I would never use today. But, in my regular playthroughs, I always went Squirtle, and then I understood, okay, you want to have these Pokemon, you want to train them all up evenly, not just your starter, blah, blah, blah. So, like, in the newer playthrough, I kind of tried to mix Pokemon that I liked that I had in my first playthrough with mainstays. So, I started with Squirtle, had my Blastoise, had my Hitmonlee and my Jolteon, but I also went with, like, unorthodox ones that I usually didn't use, like Victreebel and Fearow. I forgot who else rounded it out, but either way, it was just a fun experience, and it just reminded me why that game deserves my number 2 spot, just because it started me on this path of these, of these simple yet, addictive RPGs that, I haven't necessarily stopped playing. I'm not necessarily, playing competitive right now for, like, the current games, but, I like to train the competitive teams just to have them so I could battle with my friends or whatever, and, like, I'm looking forward to Sun and Moon and stuff, but, it all started with the, Red, Blue, Yellow, so.
So here's one of the cool things about this whole thing that we're doing right now is having you on it's like, there's just, like, I'm not part of the millennial generation, and I don't, you know what I mean? And, like, hearing...
Technically you are. I hate to break it to you. Technically we are.
We are?
We're, like, right on the cusp. We're on the cusp.
I thought I was Generation X.
We can go either way.
Anyway.
We can go really either way.
It's a technicality. You know what the point I'm trying to make is?
Yeah.
It's like, it's really cool to hear we're at the point in gaming now, video gaming, where there are multiple generations that have had multiple different experiences, and we can hear them. Like, the games that are in my top 5 aren't going to be in your top 5 because they weren't a thing for you at all. And that's fine. I'm not going to tell you, man, you need to go back, you need to appreciate this. I'm not going to be that guy.
Like, some of them I have, yeah. Like, and,
sure.
like, I've definitely gone back and, played Mario 3, and I love that game, and Mario World, and even the original Mario Brothers, and, like you said, Link to the Past, Super Metro.
Right.
Like, I've played all those, but, like you were saying, it's about the nostalgia thing. It's where you got your starts.
The other thing, too, is, like, literally when I played Doom, a mouse wasn't a thing. I booted up my computer in MS-DOS. Windows was new. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not trying to be like, this is not a superiority thing, like, at all. It's just like,
It's just crazy.
man, you know, the idea of you controlling a first-person shooter with no mouse, like, what does that sound like to you? Chaos?
You just come at it from a different angle.
Right.
Like I come at it from an angle where I came into life, in RPG life, probably the same way with Pokemon Red,
Right.
Blue, and Yellow. And I have another friend who like even put that at number 2 on his list. So
And likewise, we missed that because like Pokemon wasn't something that appealed necessarily to us. And that's all. I just wanted to say like this was a really cool thing to like kind of do. So
There you go.
No, we've gone way too long on Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like, this is supposed to be like a half an hour segment. We're already at an hour. So
yeah, I was gonna say, but my number 2 is a different type of RPG. The RPG I went with, and I needed at least one on the list, was Chrono Trigger, which I think is undisputably the best RPG of all time, and why I got it almost at number 1 is I wish I could have made like a Final Fantasy on my list, but I don't know. I think that the best Final Fantasy game, or the best fantasy RPG game, is actually not a Final Fantasy, it's Chrono Trigger.
I disagree with that, but Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite RPGs of all time, definitely.
Chrono Trigger is amazing in its own way, its own unique way. Like, it was really funny when I built that crazy, stupid, long playlist I have. I thought, I don't know if Chrono Trigger music is really something that appeals to me that much. And then I did a Control F on the whole list and typed in Chrono Trigger, and it was like, oh, hey, there's like 10 songs on here from Chrono Trigger. Okay, I guess I really do, you know? Like, there's a lot of good stuff in that game. The whole idea of, you know, characters combining their attacks, plus the sort of, I don't know, ATB system that they kind of stole from Final Fantasy. Sure, why not?
I mean, you can't really steal from yourself.
Fair
like,
enough. That's why I kind of said that tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But it was innovative. It was unique. It was really cool that these characters would learn ways to interact with each other.
Yeah, I think it was both a new thing and it was an old thing, like you said, with the Final Fantasy elements, but also that group character tactic that like would only be expanded upon in games like the Persona series. The thing is that I think it also has like the best story in all the games that I probably play, all the fantasy games that I probably played. It's the most classic at the same time as being,
I would argue that point on you when I got to my number 1, but I will say it is freaking gorgeous too. Like, it looks like a painting. Like, it's so pretty.
It is gorgeous for its style. It's probably the best in terms of graphics. So, like, I mean, you get the 10 there, but I think the way that the game can end in all different sorts of ways makes it like a different type of story depending on how you play it, and that makes it so versatile in terms of its overall plot.
Yeah.
Well, and also like story-wise, like the way that it does the way that the past affects the future, you know, and the present and stuff like that. Like, that stuff is so cool. You know, like if you're like nice to a guy in the past and give him something for free, then his descendant is like a super nice guy and, you know, is very generous. But if you sell it to him in the past, then his whole lineage, from that point on is, you know, like very stingy and they're very like miserly and stuff like that. And I thought that was like really cool little elements to it.
Yeah.
And Frog is my all-time favorite RPG character.
Oh, hell yeah.
Frog is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And his theme song is like one of the greatest video game themes, you know, period.
Sure.
Well, we already did my number 1, so JD, what's yours?
My number 2, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Angelo, you're number 2. I'm sorry.
I'll be real quick because we already discussed it. It was Mega Man 3. That was my number 2.
Okay.
I thought it was, just briefly, I thought the music was some of the best I'd ever heard come out of an NES sound chip. I think it's still like some of the best music out there to come from that thing. Obviously, you're talking about Mega Man, you're talking about top tier Capcom at like top of their game when it comes to just about everything. The game just went on. You beat the Robot Masters, and like this was one of those games where like you beat the Robot Masters, like, all right, out of the castle. Wait, what's going on? Oh, I have to beat these 4 other, and then there was like the Doc Robot that took over like the souls of the Mega Man 2 robots, which I didn't understand at the time because I played them in a different order. Crazy.
Seems to be a recurring theme with you.
Yeah, I know. But just like I didn't know what was going on. I thought, man, what is this? So it was a crazy game, and then going back to 2 kind of explained it, and then that made the revelation even cooler. What was happening in those like corrupted versions of the other Robot Master levels? So yeah, it's my number 2.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Mega Man 3.
Well, JD, what's your number 1? We'll get y'all's number 1s, and then we'll take a little break and move on.
So my favorite game of all time, undisputed, Metroid Prime. I didn't plan on that rhyming, but it did.
Yeah.
But yeah, Metroid Prime was not necessarily the first Metroid that I beat, but it was one of, like, you know, I got Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime the same Christmas. I finished Fusion first because it was a little bit more accessible, and that was a fantastic game. But Metroid Prime stands out to me for so many different reasons. Like, it was the visuals, it was the music, the atmosphere, the amount of exploration and lore that was in the game just from, you know, reading the different skins and stuff like that. The, you know, way that it executed first-person platforming in such a, you know, excellent and almost, you know, perfect way that kind of created its own subgenre at the time, and still, you know, that still kind of stands as its own subgenre today. So, you know, even the, like, minor details, like the HUD, like the way that, you know, Samus's visor would, you know, fog up when you go into, you know, certain areas, or when you shoot into the water, you see her reflection.
Yeah, there's a bright flash, you'd see her. That was so cool.
Yeah, it was just like, and, you know, even, like, you know, the little secrets, like the little ways you can break the game to kind of, you know, flex it, like, you can do, like, rapid missiles, like, if you shoot a missile and shoot the gun, and press your cannon in a certain, like, rapid succession, you can shoot rapid missiles, and, you know, they had the scan jump that you can use to get the jump boots early in the game.
Or like if you did the X-ray vision, you could see her hand in the arm cannon.
Yeah.
And then if you switch weapons, her fingers would be in different positions to like tell the cannon what to do. That was amazing that they thought of that stuff.
Exactly. And, like, on top of that, like, I remember when I first played the game, the reason it took me a while to beat, I actually didn't finish that game until the day before Metroid Prime 2 came out. And the reason why was, like, when I got the game, I was a little scared of it just because of, like, some of the sci-fi elements kind of, were a bit much for me because I was I got not sheltered, but I was like a wimpy kid. But, my cousin came over and I watched him play through most of the game, and it was not only a bonding experience for us because I got to see, like, you know, what the game was and, you know, how to approach it and certain techniques and stuff like that, but it was, you know, we just got to talk, you know, and hang out, and I got to hang out with my older cousin who I never got to see because he was, you know, my uncle was based in Italy, so I hadn't seen him for like 7 years or something. He came back and we would hang out and play Soul Calibur 2 and Metroid Prime, and it was just like part of a bonding experience, but also just part of, you know, me just, you know, getting into video games, like, definitively. And, you know, every time I go back and play Metroid Prime, like, it doesn't really age poorly at all. Like, you know, granted, the last time I played through it was on the Wii, but I like the Wii controls. I actually feel like those controls fit the game really well. But
yeah,
it's almost timeless. And, you know, I'm surprised it hasn't gotten an HD upgrade. Like, to be honest, it doesn't need one super desperately because it still looks great. But, you know, if it did get one, like, they wouldn't really have to change anything. Like, they could just, you know, give it like nice HD visuals and re-release it, and it would still be a great game. Yeah.
If this was a top 10 list, this would have definitely made my top 10. Absolutely.
Yeah. I have played it once when it came out, and somehow I still remember it as if I played it yesterday. Like, it left such an indelible mark that I almost feel like I don't need to replay it, just because, like, I feel like it's still in there. Mm-hmm. But I want to go back and play it.
Like, that's the type of game that, like, that's why I was interested in the first place, because, you know, I had heard my cousin talk about, you know, Super Metroid, but I didn't know what it was because I didn't have a Nintendo system. So when I heard that there's these Metroid games coming out, and I had a GameCube, I had a Game Boy Advance, I was like, I want these because my cousin, he said this is cool. And I remember I was at the Wiz. This is when the Wiz still existed.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had a demo of Metroid Prime, and I got to see it, and like that first Frigate Orpheon level is perfect. And it was like a perfect introduction to the game, and it's just like you look at it, and as soon as she jumps out the ship, and it was from there on, I was like, yeah this is amazing.
Yeah. I can close my eyes and remember like just jumping out of the ship the first time. That's one of the most memorable beginnings of a game, and I think it feels like you almost do the same thing at the beginning of the other two.
Yeah,
I still like
pretty much, but
all three of them.
Like,
but
it made it like the music, it gives you chills almost, like thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my number one.
Well, Patrick, let me see. Is this where we talk about Ocarina of Time?
I mean, we don't have to. I felt like you should have just gotten that out of the way at the beginning. The least surprising pick.
What do you mean?
Wait, is that it? Was I right?
Yeah.
It's not a soccer game, Patrick?
No, it's not a FIFA game.
FIFA?
I would burn this whole podcast to the ground.
So
it was it's Mega Man Soccer.
Oh no.
How about Backyard Soccer? Backyard Soccer was good.
Well, Mega Man Soccer is a nightmare.
It's hard because if I were making more of a competitive focused thing, I would put FIFA up there, but I would put that with Overwatch as well as StarCraft and stuff still, and that would still be below all those. So, it's really still hard for a sports game to make the list, even when you're thinking esports and competitive play, because there's so many just original games in the digital world. You wouldn't want to put something that originally started in a different medium in your top 5, I don't think, because it's a real life game at its core. But
with Ocarina, did you play the 3DS one?
No, and actually when I was talking to my friends about top 5s, and some of them have not had an N64, but they just got a 3DS because of Pokemon Go, where they needed to play Pokemon X and Y right now afterwards. So I have multiple friends who just bought a 3DS after because of that. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time is fantastic. I played the original version, the GameCube version, and the 3DS version. I think the 3DS version is my favorite of the three.
Yeah, I debate how heavy we should go into Ocarina and why it's the best, because it's just obvious and everyone knows it. But also I've talked about it on a lot of podcasts before, and I haven't even played the best version where you don't have to press pause to put on the boots. It's nice.
those damn metal boots.
All I know is when I going back to play Ocarina of Time 3D, I realized that the Water Temple was very easy for me, but the Forest Temple gave me a lot of problems.
You get off this podcast.
The
Water Temple is the hardest. It's second only to Battletoads level 3.
The first time I played Water Temple, I would agree with you. On the N64, low poly version, but on the 3DS version, the Water Temple was clockwork, because you could actually operate in an unsluggish way, and you can actually see things clearly because the graphics were better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. I know, on the Square Roots podcast, John was playing Final Fantasy IX on original hardware and on an old TV, and he was like, I can't tell what any of this stuff is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember squinting so much during the Water Temple, and I couldn't find certain things that should have been right there in front of me.
Yeah, there were those walls that you were supposed to destroy with the Megaton hammer or something, and you couldn't tell because you couldn't, the textures just weren't clear enough.
Was it just me, or was that for the entrance of the Shadow Temple too, where you're in the desert, where I couldn't find where to enter for a really long period of time? But is it like that in the 3DS as well, or am I just stupid?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just knew that playing the 3DS version in general was just easier for me. When it came, the aiming was better and the gameplay experience was just better. Maybe it's because I remembered the game and I some parts at least, but I felt like I got the best experience playing that game on that system.
So pretty often for me, though, the first temples are the hardest ones in Zelda games, though, because they do control slightly differently, like not having to jump and stuff. You just like run off. Like I always forget about that, and I have to get my bearings for a good half hour to an hour in like the original like Kakariko village or whatever, just like running around. I don't even know how to say that right because I always just look at it. But it's like a little mecca for me in terms of like where I was a child before I ever played a game like that, because I just remember being stuck as a kid in Zelda, just like being a kid in real life, and it like really parallels my real life. And so there's nothing else I could have put above it at number one, and there's nothing else it'll be for me ever, because it's that story of my growing up in a video game form.
Very, very, very well put. I will not fault you for that at all. I'm just stoked that I guessed it.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do it again. Angelo, is it Mario 3? Oh!
Top 10.
There's no Mario game on your list?
Whoa.
It is a platformer. It has
is
to be
not a platformer.
Rayman, no.
Oh, I don't know Angelo like I thought I did.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, we've talked about this before. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan.
Right. Okay, I guess I didn't expect you to...
You didn't expect it to get the number one spot, is what you're saying.
Yeah, fire it off.
Well, which one do you think it is?
Is it
9?
Nope. It is 6. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the thing you have to remember is 6 was the first time we had to talk about this. I skipped 4. So I hadn't really seen a good story in a video game before 6. And holy crap. If you're going to jump into a story, that's the one to really like scramble your brains, right? Like just imagine that being your first real video game story. No 4. 1 was weak sauce at best as far as story went. Now I love 1. Don't get me wrong. I love Final Fantasy 1. I replayed it more than I played any other Final Fantasy game.
But all the story of Final Fantasy 1 is an info dump at the very end.
Nothing.
It's like Garland's kind of explaining everything to you right before you fight him.
There really is no story to Final Fantasy 1. Like, it's a little screen that opens that has some text, and then it closes, and then you fight. Like, that's Final Fantasy 1. And I love that game. But I can't go back to it anymore. You know what I mean? I've gone back to it as much as I possibly can. And I don't think I'm necessarily going to go back to 6 anymore. But when I think of a game that has had an impact, it's 6. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, 1 as far as mechanics go. Like, again, 1 would make my top 10 if we were doing a top 10 list. For sure. But we're not doing a top 10 list. We're doing a top 5 list. So I had to make some very, very painful cuts, Julian. And, 1 got bumped down. And, I mean, I'll never forget what it felt like when I still play the PS1 version of Final Fantasy 1 and I hear, like, all the music in a new style and see, like, better artwork and stuff like that. Like, I'm not gonna... It's the weirdest thing to think of this, but, like, video game music bringing actual, like, tears to my eyes is a really weird thing.
No, it happens to me all the time,
it does
man.
that.
Yeah, Valiant Hearts.
The remake of that music does that because all I can think of is it's like, man, what would this guy have thought of just like composing little tunes in a garage, which is what Uematsu was doing at that point. That one day it would turn into something this gorgeous. And it's just these little quick melodies. I don't know. It's just a whole other thing. And then the 6 is the same thing. Like Final Fantasy 1 became Final Fantasy 6 at some point. And then Final Fantasy 7 by proxy. Final Fantasy 7 would have probably made a cut at some point as well if we were doing a top 20. Here I go.
I totally want to have 7 on there too, and it's really hard for me to like keep it off the list entirely, and that's why I have Chrono Trigger on there so high. I think because they're all there, and it's just so hard to pick one of them. They could have their own top 10 lists, and you'd be fine.
Well, Final Fantasy
picking
6
all Final Fantasy
did for story. Final Fantasy 7 did for visuals. For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
See, 7 was my first, so it did both of those for me at the same time.
See, I love this generation gap thing. It's real fun because that's got to be a cool experience. You play video games.
And we also posited that when we did our Final Fantasy episode that kind of your first is your favorite. Usually, most of the time, like
Yeah.
that your exposure to Final Fantasy is kind of the one that defines what the series is for you.
Mhm.
So, there's somebody out there who Final Fantasy 13 is the shit because that was like their first experience with the series.
Lightning, huh?
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Hold on, JD, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Sorry.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure.
Making
Okay.
sure my signal was good before I turned on the cam again. Yep.
I don't understand what Final Fantasy 13 was trying to do. Like, I see the pieces of it scattered throughout the Final Fantasy series, but I don't feel like it comes together in something that really, really interests me at all.
I feel like, that game was
the
the
meta
first one.
story.
That's neither here nor
Yeah,
there.
we're talking about
That's a
like,
whole
Final
other
Fantasy
kettle of
6
fish.
now. And I mean, just, my gosh, that story was, like, that's why Nier didn't make the top 5, because when I look back at impacts that stories had, I didn't know video games had stories before Final Fantasy 6, aside from Save the Mushroom Kingdom again, So that was a really cool thing.
For Final Fantasy, I was wondering though, is there a meta story that brings them all together? Like I got one for Zelda, and that's part of the reason I like it at number 1 overall. But like, I never have heard anything that like unifies them at all, except for the name. I mean, like like Cactar, but
Yeah, because there's not.
The
I mean,
deities are the only thing in common, but that didn't really start necessarily until like 4. So there might be, if you want to get super, super meta, there might be some story in the far background where all these deities are just going from world to world, saving them somehow. But that's about it.
It is yet to be written.
And it's very, very,
It is-
like, that's me making, like, that's practically fan fiction from what I just said.
Dude, that should happen though.
I mean, Nintendo did it with Zelda because that Zelda Historia is not. That's just bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like that. But because Final Fantasy is like they tried to like shoehorn the whole thing together with like the Dissidia games where it's like, oh yeah, it's order and I forget. I think it's Gaia and Chaos or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've always been fighting, and it's through these different worlds and stuff. But no, like Final Fantasy, like each game is like its own world. Like you have certain commonalities. You have monsters that carry over, summons that carry over. Obviously, Sid, airship, stuff like that. But for the most part, each one is its own animal.
But they're all in your world in the end, so aren't they all in one world?
Obi-Wan?
I do like this kind of weird idea that there's, that all these deities are somehow having an influence in this world, and that's what holds them together. But
who's the major deity then? Like, who's the biggest or the big 3 maybe
Bahamut,
in the
probably,
Final Fantasy deities?
because he's the oldest. He was in the very first game, but that's again me really just making guesses. Like Square Enix will never come out and. Well, maybe they will if Nintendo did with Zelda.
Oh, please. Please no.
Yeah, leave that alone. But I mean, Bahamut was in the very first Final Fantasy. None of the other ones were. They kind of kept adding them as they went along until we have what we have today. So, but that's all they have in common. That's it.
And that is our top 5 games of all time for our very lengthy stage select, but we do have some input from listeners and some other people. Patrick, you actually had some friends that wanted to chime in as you started recording.
Yeah. I have this group chat called the Happy Playtime Pals, and we always get on and pal it up. And
oh boy,
it used to have a different name, but then somebody's boss saw it, and we had to change it. Yeah, it wasn't good for anybody. But one of them put Pokemon Red and Blue at 2, so I got really excited when JD put it at number 2 as well. So, my friend Mike McLethal, who I played mostly Destiny with and Rocket League and stuff, he put Final Fantasy VII up at number 1, Pokemon Red, Blue 2, Command and Conquer Red Alert number 2
nice.
At 3. And then number 4, he put this game Valor, which I never even heard of, but it's a phone game.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. But then he should have put this higher on the list, but he put Rocket League 5. He like always plays that still now, like every single day with this other friend of ours. And we're like, why don't you guys play Overwatch? And they're like, cars. Just like every single day.
I laugh, but at some point, that was me with Twisted Metal. You know? Oh, why don't you play a fighting game? Because Twisted Metal exists. So.
Yep. Well, I'm just going to keep going down my list because I got 3 more friends that chimed in. So all the Kingsmen 7 is my friend Ryan Jonker, who said that he put Skyrim number 1, Mass Effect 2 number 2, Ocarina 3, Journey 4, and Banjo-Kazooie 5, which is an interesting eclectic mix.
I agree with everything on that list except that last one.
You wouldn't put Banjo anywhere near there?
I wouldn't put Banjo in my top 50. Like, but I have been adamant in my dislike of Rare's 3D platforming games, but in the past.
See, I mean, those were early collecting days for me too, but I had a friend who would bring Banjo over, so I have really good memories. I could see how that would work.
I would imagine he's probably a little younger than me, and definitely, because, you know, actually when JD was on, when we were talking about, like, the Nintendo 64, or when we were talking about the 90s and we were talking about the N64 games, like, that was definitely where I saw that age gap where I was like, okay, you guys, I understand that you guys remember those games fondly, but if you go back and play them now, you're going to be disappointed.
The thing that I have to keep reminding myself is I have cousins graduating college right now whose first console was an N64. And that makes me feel freaking old.
Dude, in a couple of years, it's going to be like Xbox 360.
I know.
I taught some kids who like it was Xbox One, and it's
No, my kids' first console was a Wii. I mean, what?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one, you know.
Sure. But wow.
Damn. I mean, that would be nice. But like,
what's your next one, Patrick?
Well, my friend _ D Murph, he's got a hilarious one where I think you'll be like, if you go back and play it, would it still really hold up? It's kind of like a type of game that they don't even really think about that much anymore. But that's at number 5. He goes down the list. Final Fantasy VII at 1 again. Zelda Ocarina at number 2. Rocket Cars at number 3, which is more honest because he's the other guy in the tandem. I think it's a really you could really bro out if you find the right partner in that game. Yeah. And then number 4 is Age of Empires, which was fun in its own right, but it's one of those, if you go back, I'm not sure. And then Roller Coaster Tycoon at 5.
Okay.
Fun mix there.
Nice.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Lot of strong praise for Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Final Fantasy VII, which I shouldn't be surprised at all.
It's just really funny because I don't get Zelda 64. I mean, Ocarina of Time. See, there we go again.
Oh yeah, I still call it Zelda.
It happens.
No, I totally get it. I mean, especially, even for our age, and it's like, I totally get it. Like, you know, that and Mario 64, I mean, they basically changed the landscape of how, you know, they informed how games were going to be, you know, from then on, you know, as far as their particular genres.
But the weird thing is I get Mario 64, like I can go play Mario 64 and have a great time. I have never finished Ocarina of Time. I haven't gotten that far in it. It never clicked with me, no matter how many times I tried.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but even so, I think even divorcing yourself from that, just looking at it at like what it does and what it did, like, you know, I can definitely see that being not just on people's lists, but being at the top of a lot of people's lists.
But I mean, I never got into a 3D Zelda until Twilight Princess, which is a real weird thing to.
Oh, damn!
Yeah.
I just find that funny because Twilight Princess is just like an iteration on, well, probably the one 3D Zelda that's the most iterative of Ocarina of Time.
But it's less abstract. Like the visuals are more clear, and I wonder if that has something.
But I mean,
to do
it's
with
because it's a newer game.
But I got used to maybe, and I'm speculating. I have no idea what it is. But maybe I got used to such a high level of fidelity with the sprites that when everything went 3D, I just went, I don't get this. Like I couldn't get back to that. And then when everything started getting those back to that
64,
level of fidelity, it started to click again.
Yeah, those blurry 64 polygons were kind of rough in some
That's what I'm saying, the 3DS version.
The frame rate was real low on Zelda 64. And I know
that's why
I'm not trying to be like that guy, but it is just what it is.
Yeah, before like frame rates were like even a thing in my life though. I didn't even know what that was, so I was just like, oh, that's just it. And I had no like words to put it into in my life, so it was just like that's just how it's supposed to be, and I just like would blink and like let it pass, you know?
I didn't understand what frame rate was until I want to say the Sega Dreamcast, when people were telling me that, hey, that's what makes these games feel so fast is they're not dropping frames. And I was like, oh, and then like so many things clicked at that moment. But anyway, we're digressing.
Right. I got one more friend who, it was funny the way that he said he got into the conversation. His, name's at RyWalsh19. And he said, at RyWalsh19, I said, Walsh, you didn't send a list of games. He's like, oh, no, it's the first Zelda on N64. I was like, we need 5 though. He's like, oh, 5, you just need that. But then he was like talking about Mario Kart and ended up putting that number 1. And so he went Mario Kart 64, Zelda the first one on 64, GTA San Andreas, Black Flag, PS4, Mario,
Assassin's Creed,
and then Mario 3. I was like, nice list. I love Black Flag, but I'm so surprised you put that on there because he's been gaming, since the beginning. He's a little bit older than me, I think, at least.
Okay. I would have expected younger just from that list.
But that's also not the
Maybe
beginning.
Like, not to disparage him. It's just like that. It's like, okay, yeah, like I can see that list if you're like in your early 20s or something like that. But then you put Mario 3 and it's like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, it gets a little bit from the very beginning and a little bit from like, very recently. But yeah. So those are my buds, the Happy Playtime Pals.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Happy Playtime Pals. As I said at the beginning, we didn't get a lot of, input on this one yet. I'm sure we will after this episode, now that you see what it is. But, Casey, fellow Pixelbit writer, said, it was an easy question. Number 5, Pokemon Heart Gold. Number 4, Super Mario World, which I do agree that is the best of the Mario games. Number 3 is Mass Effect 2. Number 2 is Crash Bandicoot Warped, which invalidates your entire list. Sorry. And number 1 is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, and I've heard him many, many times talk about how much he loves that game.
It's worth mentioning that Casey's younger than Julian and I, too. So...
But if you want to get a Crash Bandicoot game in there, I'm not sure why they don't just say Uncharted 4 since the Crash is in there.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I've never been a Crash fan even from the beginning. But, if you do you, that's cool.
Yeah, it's such a weird angle. I mean, if you like running towards yourself.
Oh, the boulder runs were
sometimes I do.
Anyway.
And, we did have a couple, over at pixelbit.com. You can always go to the comment sections at Nerds Without Pants and comment there. And really quick, before I get into this next stage select pick, we had a new person sign up at pixelbit.com in order to, comment. He goes by the name of Xrian. And I wanted to read his initial comment first before we get into this because this warmed my heart.
Cause he likes Julian.
He likes us.
He likes you.
He says, hey, NWP crew. I heard about you guys months ago through the Comics Conspiracy podcast, but never went out of my way to check you guys out. That was until Julian guest starred on it and mentioned Chrono Crossing. With Chrono Cross being my favorite game, I just had to check out the NWP cast. To my delight, not even 5 minutes in, I was greeted with the main song that defined my journey into RPGs, which I'm guessing he must have gone and listened to one of the first couple Chrono Crossing episodes. The memories came flooding back and I knew I had to add you guys to my weekly podcast list. So thank you very much. Not only, it's nice to know that somebody listened to me on Comics Conspiracy when I guested and then came and listened, but also that you went out of your way to join Pixelbit so that you could comment and participate in the show means a lot to us. So thank you very much. And he did give us some stage select picks. He says, it's a tough way to start off a segment, but here goes. Number 5, Gunstar Heroes.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I had room for some more stuff on this list, like R-type games. And, Julian, I hate you.
Right.
It's a fantastic game. It's actually, one of those backwards compatible games that's on my Xbox One hard drive or ready to be installed. And I keep, hovering over it, should I? Maybe later. But, fantastic game.
We need, a top 5, not top 5 list.
I think that's getting too meta. Number four. Number 4 is Super Metroid. He says, I still get goosebumps when the Super Metroid sacrifices itself and Samus slowly rises to give Mother Brain immediately whiplash with the Hyper Beam. And actually, when I would play that when I was like a teenager, I would like be like, I would actually scream at the screen like, "You killed my baby!"
If only Samus didn't go on to
choice.
actually do that.
True. Yeah. Number 3, Shadow of the Colossus, which I feel that we will be talking about a lot in upcoming episodes of Nerds Without Pants for various reasons. It says the only thing wrong is that there weren't more Colossi.
I'll probably regret not having put it on my list after playing like The Last Guardian later this year.
We'll see. Yeah. I kind of want to go back and play my HD collection, and I haven't done that yet. Number 2 is Legend of Zelda. Sorry. Oh, Legend of Xena. Wouldn't that be awesome? Probably not. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Still the best Zelda, and no other Zelda is even close in my opinion. I'd say Okami is the next best thing.
Okami's pretty good too.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. And then number 1, I mean, kind of already, spilled the beans, but Chrono Cross, my favorite RPG, so maybe even nostalgic, or my first RPG. So I may be nostalgic, but I feel it still holds up. The music and battle system are still my favorites of any RPG. I love the music of Chrono Cross. I love the graphics of Chrono Cross. I feel it has too many characters, and I never quite got the battle system. But again, I played it when it came out, and I haven't played it since, so I need to rectify that.
I think the battle system... It's interesting that was his first battle system, because to the rest of us, like, that is such a bizarre battle system. Like, it's so abnormal.
Right?
It's so not the typical JRPG battle system. But yeah, you know,
So maybe if you approach it without that baggage, it's, mind blowing.
Maybe that's your first one, right? I mean, if somebody's
what
first one was Final
happens in
Fantasy
Chrono
2,
Trigger's battle?
What's that, Patrick?
What happens in Chrono Cross's battle system that's different than Trigger's? Because the funny thing about Cross is that I bought it after I beat Trigger, and I played the first chapter of it, and then I put it down completely and never picked it up again because I was like, this isn't that.
Okay.
And I couldn't. It was just after I got over my favorite RPG of all time. So
pick it up again, because there's a payoff later on that is totally worth it.
It's if memory serves, I mean, one, it's like a straight up Chrono Trigger was turn based too, but this one is more like menu driven, and like it had like these you had like a certain number of action points
slots
per turn. Yeah, and like different abilities took a different number of them, and you could store them to do more attacks at a time.
So
if
what
I
you
remember,
could do is,
but you could also go into a
either
deficit.
Attack with a level 1 attack or pass, and you could do that to 3 times, and you have a fully charged meter. The more you passed, the different attacks you had accessible to you. So you had ones that would cash in the first notch of your meter, first 2 notches, or the whole thing. And then you could slot abilities in based on stuff that you got when you beat bosses and how many slots you had available. Kind of like a materia system, but not really.
Right.
And, and then our final entry is from, faithful listener Michael117. He actually approached it as, instead of going for nostalgia or historical importance, he went with, if he was being forced to play only 5 games forever.
Nice.
That's what it is.
Hardcore.
Sure.
He went, number 5, Spelunky, which, no surprise there if you've been listening to the show. Number 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, which invalidates your list. Michael, I'm sorry.
Nope.
No, I'm just kidding.
Different kind of list.
Number 3 is Halo 3. Number 2 is Skyrim, which he mentions is on the PC with mods. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much an endless game at that point.
Right.
And number 1 is Mass Effect 1, which completely validates your list. So
my list would be completely different if we were talking desert island games, which might not be a bad topic. That's another stage select down the road.
Definitely.
But this is the first stage select in the books. Now this was a long one, but that's because it's a new feature and we were excited, and we also went with 5 selections and stuff. So, we also have a guest. So yeah, this is a lengthy one.
It's a big deal though.
Dude, you had us talk about our top 5 games of everything. Yeah.
It's the biggest deal.
It was by design. Now, our next stage select is going to be a lot simpler. It's only going to be 3 things that we have to come up with. And it's in honor of how much we've been talking about Doom and everything, because that game's got a lot of awesome weapons. So I want you guys to think about it, and we're going to come back next episode with our top 3 weapons of all time in video games.
Woo!
So thanks again to everybody who contributed, and we will take a quick break, and we will see you for a very brief consumption junction.
Yeah.
We have decided to do a very brief version of Consumption Junction this episode because we're going a little long because that was an epic introduction to Stage Select. So, JD, you were at EVO 2016, and it was your first time at EVO. It's something that I've kind of played around the idea of going to, but I think that my time as a Street Fighter might be coming to a close, and I just don't think that I've got it in me anymore, but what I want to ask you first is so what did you do to prepare? Cause obviously you've been playing a lot of Street Fighter V just because it's new, but this had to have been a different
100 push-ups,
thing altogether.
100
Yeah,
sit-ups,
I mean, well,
squats.
the thing is,
do some finger exercises.
Well, the thing is, with going to EVO this year, it was late last year when my friends and I decided that we wanted to actually make this a thing. So, we followed them on Twitter just to make sure we were up on it when everything went on sale. And, going is easy. It's pretty much like going to any convention. You just have to make sure you can actually get to Vegas and have a place to stay and whatnot. But, in terms of preparation for EVO, I consider myself, an average Street Fighter player. There are times where I could be slightly better than average, but I'm generally average. And I personally was I should practice, I should have been practicing more probably, but I didn't really start practicing seriously until about a month before we left. And I entered 3 games. I entered Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, I entered Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and I entered Street Fighter V. And out of those 3 games, the one I really practiced in was for Street Fighter V because it's new and it's the game that I am the most competitive in. Marvel, I had a time where I was really competitive at it, but I stopped playing it, but I entered it more just to say I did. And Smash Brothers I did kind of for the same reasons. My friends don't have Wii U, so they don't really play Smash as much as we used to. Smash used to be my bread and butter, and that I entered it because of a legacy type of thing. But I trained for about a month of just studying up on certain things that I wanted to get good at execution wise. I knew, I play Chun-Li, and Chun-Li is considered one of the better characters in Street Fighter V, but she's also one of the more difficult to use well. She has a high execution barrier. So I wanted to make sure I could execute, certain combos. So, I would go online and see, okay, what are her basics? What are, the things I need to be doing? And I would go in training mode and I would play against my friends, and I played a lot of casual matches and battle lounges with people, from Facebook groups and stuff like that. And I did that, every Wednesday I would go to my friend's house, and every Wednesday we hang out and we'll, cause we all work in the city, we'll just meet someplace at a bar and, hang out after work or something. But we took that whole month and just played Street Fighter V. And, we would, if I felt like one of us needed practice online, we would do like, sessions online, just, trading the controller, fighting people and analyzing matches and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we did to prepare. And I feel like overall it was very helpful because I can do a lot more in the game and I understand the game a lot better because of that month of training. But in terms of playing in tournament, that's a completely different beast that I kind of forgot about because and playing in tournaments, I've played in a lot of Smash tournaments before, but I've only played Street Fighter in a tournament one time, and that was when Street Fighter 4 just came out. I played Marvel in a tournament and stuff like that, but Street Fighter I hadn't. And for Street Fighter 5, it's a brand new game. And it was interesting playing that game in a tournament environment for the first time. But Julian, you were saying how you weren't sure if you were into it, kind of phasing out of the fighting, the competitive nature or whatever. But I still feel like if you entered, you would be surprised by how well you could do. Because, sorry.
No, yeah, I think my thing is that I think, not to brag or anything, but I think that I have a natural affinity for Street Fighter in the sense that if I go cold and I haven't played a Street Fighter game in a long time, I'm still going to do pretty good. And if I practice, I do even better. Like JD, a couple years ago, you and I did the 100 match melee. And now I will say one thing that sets you and I apart is that when I was growing up, when I was playing Street Fighter as a kid, there wasn't such a thing as maining. Oh, yeah. We just played Street Fighter, right? So, if you play Chun-Li against my Blanca, which are our two best characters on Street Fighter 4, you were gonna beat me probably 80 times out of 100, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing that threw you for a loop is that I could pick any one of those characters and hold my own. So yeah, I think you're right, but I don't know. Well, one thing is I don't even know what I would practice with to be that's the first thing is I've never had the patience just sit in the training mode and just do stuff over and over and over and over.
Well, there's a certain way that you practice and you kind of get that as you start to understand the game more. But the way that I would do it at first is, if, for example, if it's execution. So the main thing is if there was something that I wanted to be able to do, and I understand what you had to do, but you just had to, it's pretty much like working out. You have to just keep doing it until, it gets, starts to become muscle memory. And for me, one of my execution challenges, two of my execution challenges were there's a certain combo that you have to do with Chun-Li to go right into spinning bird kick that I had trouble with because you have to, start charging at a certain period in the combo, and it was hard for me to do. And, over the course of that month, I would just practice that. And then, another one is, you doing her, she has her lightning legs. You can do them in the air, and with a certain motion, you can do it right off the ground. So you do it right off, it pretty much puts you in a position where you have advantage over the other character. So it makes her really strong. It makes her approach game really strong. And the execution for that is very difficult. And before, at the beginning of my training, I couldn't do it at all, or I could do it maybe 1 out of 20 times. But now I've gotten it down to the point where I can do it, out of 10 times, I could probably do it 7 out of 10. I can do it on a pretty consistent basis. I could do it in match, and it's just a matter of figuring out what you're trying to do and then trying to execute it. But, most of my, most training obviously just comes from playing matches and studying those. That's really where I got my reps in.
Do you watch the people the way that their hands are moving,
no, I don't watch hands. Sometimes I watch hands, but it's mostly watching actions. So it's when I watch myself, I try to, look at me and what I'm doing, because when you're playing, you make different decisions. You make certain, snap decisions, and when you watch it back, you can analyze that and say, okay, well, here I was pressing too many buttons, so I got counter hitted all this time, and I took all this damage. Instead, I should have just held back and then waited, because he jumped right here and I was pressing buttons, so I did a jab, but instead I could have anti-aired him. And it's like you start thinking in that way, and it helps, over time.
Kind of reminds me of like those football coaches looking over tapes at the end of the game.
Yeah. It's pretty much the same thing. And, so I would watch my own footage, and then I would watch, footage of higher level play, just to get an idea of how to utilize, because you can learn certain techniques in Street Fighter, but if you know the techniques, but you don't know how to apply them, you might as well not be doing them. So I would, watch higher level play just to say, okay, well, now I can do instant air, lightning legs, but how do I use it? Like, why should I use this in match? Because, you try it yourself and you're like, well, I did it, but I got punished and I don't understand why I should use it. But then you might watch a player and understand, okay, I should use it in this situation, and that's what makes it good. But
everything is situational.
It's easier to theorize about Street Fighter than to actually play it, and that's the one of the challenging things about it. But it's also one of the things that I like about it the most. And with Street Fighter V in particular, like, I feel like I understand this game a lot better than I did Street Fighter 4 entirely, just because the mechanics are simpler yet still deep enough for, it to matter. And I feel like the character balance is also better. So, like, it's easier for me to play multiple characters. Like in Street Fighter V, I can play, I would say 5 or 6 characters competently. Whereas in Street Fighter 4, I feel like I only ever had a real good grasp on 1 or 2 of them, maybe 3. And then I had a couple others that I liked to use, but I was never really good with them. But Street Fighter V is a lot different, and it was a little bit easier for me to train in,
Right.
Do you think the trials really prepared you for that, or the demonstrations? I don't know. It was hard for me, like, at the end of the trials or demonstrations for some of the Ryu ones, just not to get the exact timing down. Like, when you cancel or something, you can't really see it, like, when they actually show it from my perspective, at least, because I'm such a noob. But, like, it is still very fun for me to play 5 versus 4, because 5, you can still get a lot of their moves out, even if you can't, like, combo them all together. And that way you can at least see where they're going with it a little bit easier, and there's more stuff that even looks like it combos, even if it doesn't quite work perfectly, but it's just like more flexible to me. And I like playing it as the new ones like Ibuki and Balrog too, and I got enough money just by doing normal stuff to be able to not spend the money on the pass either, so I don't think it's like they're really screwing us over in that end. I don't know if I'm with you, if you're with me there.
I mean, I would be, but I'm one of the people, so I wussed out and got the season pass because I realized that the amount of time that I was playing the game and the amount of time I would have to play the game to be able to afford all the characters, because I wanted all the characters, I'm going to want all the characters, and, the amount of time you have to play to get all of them is just ridiculous. And you can do the story and you could try to do the survivals, but it's just I was playing a lot of other games for a few months, and I was playing Street Fighter, but I was playing Street Fighter maybe once a week, but the rest of the week I'd be playing other stuff, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get the season pass, because it's not like I'm not gonna stop playing this game. So yeah, they got me there, but I do, I'm glad that you were able to afford characters with them, cause I still technically I could afford some characters, I could have probably bought 4 characters with the amount of fight money I had, but I was like, screw it, I'll just get the season pass and use it to get cosmetics and get some costumes, get some stages, whatever.
Yeah, that's the one thing I won't be able to get, because a lot of the stages and costumes cost a lot. Yeah. I got the Balrog stage. The Vegas one is awesome, but besides that...
But, no, that's...
speaking of Vegas, what was the actual Evo event like?
Yeah, so
I mean, was it different than you expected?
Yeah, like so this Evo is a completely different, venue for both the regular tournament and grand finals day. Because like up until this Evo, I've been a spectator, and they've had it, since I started watching, at least they've had it they used to host it at hotels. Like they would have like hotel ballrooms and stuff. But this year they held the tournament at the Las Vegas Convention Center. And then they held the grand finals at Mandalay Bay, which is kind of like, where they host boxing matches and stuff like that. Now, with the tournament itself, it was pretty much all, like the whole entire, all of Evo took place in this one convention hall, and it was big enough to fit everybody, but it got a little cramped at points because, especially like if you're trying to spectate and watch matches, like it got really crowded. And it was kind of hard to find places to sit sometimes, but overall, it was, I don't know if you've ever been to Comic-Con or like a convention, but just imagine that, but instead of a whole bunch of vendors, it's just a lot of fighting game setups. So you had, Mortal Kombat, you had, a Pokken tournament, and Smash Melee, and Smash 4, and Street Fighter 5, and Marvel vs. Capcom, whenever like they set that up, and Killer Instinct had its small area, and then they did have a few vendors, and they had a demo station for King of Fighters 14. They had a demo station for Tekken 7. They had a couple small areas with like arcade cabinets and things to do, like artist alleys and whatnot. But so it was like Evo was traditionally and is traditionally a tournament, but it's really. Like this Evo, I feel like they're starting to cross the line into convention status. Like I could see Evo becoming a tournament / convention, as time goes on, because they do have panels. Like they have, Capcom has a panel. I think Namco Bandai had one. Certain prominent fighting game community members like Maximilian and stuff. They have panels as well. So. You go in and it's just like, a cacophony of noise and just a sea of people. But, it wasn't like hard to get around really. It's just like you just find your area and you find your game and you can sit there and watch and, obviously play your matches when you play your matches. But, it was cool. Like I definitely had a good time, just being in that environment, even if it was like, it was an all-day affair, so it's like after you play your matches, like, obviously you come down off of a high of adrenaline, you kind of want to take a break, and, my friends and I, we wanted to also see Vegas, because we were only there for a few days, so usually after all of us would finish, we would leave, get food, and then go do some other stuff until, nighttime or whatever, where we would, go hang out or something, but, yeah, being at the tournament was cool, but like the Mandalay Bay for the grand finals, that was nuts. And I don't know if you watched the grand finals on stream or on ESPN or whatever, but it was pretty much like being at a wrestling event, but for fighting games. And like they had the stage set up in the Evo logo, and like, when the players would come out, it would show their characters like on the stage, like projected. And it was just like, it was crazy. And it was like, granted, like it wasn't like, every seat wasn't filled, like, it's still, generally a niche community, but it was pretty packed in there, and there were still a lot of people, and it's like, when it got hype, it got, like, extremely hype. Like, I lost my voice really early, because, like, I have very weak vocal cords anyway, so, like, if I ever go to Raw, like, within the first half hour, my voice is gone, so that's kind of how it was here, and, it was interesting, because, like, for Street Fighter 5 top 8, there was one American player, and he's from Long Island, and like I know him, like, I'm not like super close friends with him or anything, but I've come across him many times over the years, so it was cool that he made it to top 8, and like everybody just lost their minds, and it's like I lost my voice, like just cheering, and he did well. He got 5th place, so like he didn't just get 8th place and get eliminated. Like he actually beat somebody, and it was a cool story. Like if you ever get to watch top 8, you'll definitely see who I'm talking about. Long Island Joe, shout out. But anyway, and as far as how I did in the tournament, my main goal was to go 1 and 2. So for those who don't know, these tournaments are double elimination. So you have 2 chances to continue to, lose. Pretty much if you lose twice, you're eliminated from the tournament. So you are allowed 1 loss to stay in. And a lot of players in Street Fighter V in particular were going to go 0 and 2 because there were over 5,000 entrants. It was like 5,100 something.
Oh, wow.
Which is easily probably the biggest Street Fighter tournament ever. And that meant that about 2,400 of those people were going to go 0 and 2. Like statistically, I forgot who did the math, but some podcast I was listening to did the math and they came up with a number and it was pretty high. And I was like, a lot of people are going to go 0 and 2 and I didn't want to be one of those people. So my goal going into the tournament was don't go 0 and 2. And me and my friends, we trained, like I said, for this month. And out of my friends, like I am like the best at Street Fighter. Like I'm not trying to sound like cocky, but it's like if you ask my friends who's the best at Street Fighter, they're going to point me out. Like, I body my friends all the time. Like if we play 50 matches, I'll win, the vast majority of them, you know what I'm saying? But, so we, like the first day, the Friday, my friend who I train with the most, he played, he uses Rashid, who's considered like a lower tier character, but he did really well. He went 4 and 2, or either 4 and 2 or 3 and 2. And,
wow.
The first match, I thought he was like, he was, suffering from nerves, but then he, snapped out of it and he managed to do pretty well. And I was like, okay, but I was getting nervous because my pools for Street Fighter weren't to the next day. That day I played Smash 4. So I played Smash 4 and I went 0 and 2 in Smash 4. Now that I didn't practice in, but I still felt really salty because of the way I lost. Like I got randomed out to, so if anyone's played Smash before, like Luigi has an up B where it's like if you get really up close to them and you hit them, it's almost a one-hit KO. And I had a match against Luigi where I was dominating the match, but I made one mistake. He caught me with his up B and killed me, and I was very salty about it. And then
I would be too.
Yeah,
That's crap.
like I was only at 47%, and it killed me out the top. Like I was at 100 or something, and it was ridiculous. And then the guy who I played after that, he was
like about
better.
this high level Smash play, like. Who are because you mentioned earlier who the top characters are for like Street Fighter, but who are they for Smash?
Depends on which Smash you're talking about. If you're talking about Smash 4, the top characters are Cloud, Bayonetta,
That's hilarious.
No, seriously, Cloud, Bayonetta, Ryu. They're all extremely good.
No, it's hilarious that the non-Nintendo characters are the number one
like
characters.
the balance is kind of wonky. Mewtwo is really good now. Mega Man's doing well. I don't know if he's top tier, but Mega Man did really well. Sonic is up there. Fox has always been good. Yeah, Fox is
I'm gonna go practice some Mega Man.
definitely one of the top. Sheik, can't forget Sheik.
Yeah, hell yeah.
The metagame in Smash 4 is changing a lot because they're actually able to patch it, but those are the most consistent. I remember for a period of time, Zero Suit Samus was at the top. Mario's kind of been in and out. Meta Knight's been in and out.
Excuse me, did somebody say Meta Knight? No! Fuck off!
But yeah, that generally rounds it out. But I know the person who won Smash 4 was a Mario player, and second place was a Mega Man player who was fantastic. Like, he was doing stuff I had never seen before. It was amazing. But, yeah, there's like Smash 4, I really enjoy it as a game, and I wish I played it more, but it's just like, I've gotten to a point in Street Fighter where it's like, that is my game, and it's like, it's sad for me to say, cause like, in terms of competitive fighters, Smash was like my first, and I always have a soft spot for Smash, and I love playing it, but, every time I get it together with my friends now, it's Street Fighter or, nothing else, so, that's kind of sad. So, I did bad in Smash. The next day, like on Saturday, I played Street Fighter and I played Marvel. In Street Fighter, I went 1 and 2, which was my goal. Like my pool, so they seed out the pools. I don't know exactly how they do it, but you can end up in an easy pool or you could end up in a hard pool. And my pool wasn't necessarily a hard pool, but it was a challenging one. And I could tell because, like, when I was watching my friends' pools, like, you could see that there were a lot of scrubs in there. Like, there were some scrubs. And I'm not saying my friends are scrubby. They're definitely not. But you could see that there were scrubs in there. But the people that there were definitely a couple of scrubs in mine, but there were a lot of people who definitely put in a lot of time and work into the game. So the first guy that I fought, I feel like if I played him in like a 1st to 10 or something, I might have been able to go even with him or something, but he bested me just because he was playing the match better. He was playing a Fang, who was a very unorthodox character, and not a lot of people use him. So I've played a few Fangs online, but not enough to be knowledgeable about the matchup. And he beat me, so I was in loser's bracket, and I had to play against an Armika, who I was able to beat, which for me was a relief, because all I wanted to do was at least beat one person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, and our Armika is a scary character to fight, because Armika is explosive, and her damage is, like, it just comes out of nowhere sometimes, and you make 1 or 2 mistakes, and you're a dead man against a good Armika player, and luckily I was able to overcome that. But then the third guy I played, I lost to, and it was one of those situations, and this happens in Street Fighter a lot, where you play against somebody that you know that you're better than them, but you still get hit by all of their dumb stuff anyway, because you are underestimating them, and you're like, I'm still not at a good enough point to where I can analyze and just know how to beat them right away. It's just like when I'm playing, I'm playing this guy, and I'm like, okay, like he seems like he kind of knows the game, but he doesn't. But then he doesn't really fully understand it. So I put myself in a position where I underestimated him, and then he started doing a mixture of smart and dumb things at the same time, and I just couldn't adjust. And I was like, this guy's playing like a nut, and he's doing things that don't make sense. Like, if you're a Ken player, you're not supposed to be using Tatsu from full screen and then go jump back and then do it again. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But then, after doing something stupid like that, he would predict a tick throw and, backdash and shimmy, and like he would do a weird mixture of high level and low level play that just threw me off my game, and I was on tilt. And when you're on tilt, that pretty much means that you're like, it's kind of like in pinball. You're just kind of,
I know what that means.
You're
trying to recover.
JD, maybe he was playing the mind games with you, and in that case, it actually makes him like, the true like meta player, because he was that was like his whole goal was to put
I actually put it up on YouTube. Like, if you watch it, like you'll see exactly where he cracked me, because the first match, like, I'm when you play footsies, you're kind of just like trying to gain your spacing and control the field, if you will. And I start throwing out punches, and he gets hit by all of them. Like, he didn't block any of them. So I'm like, oh, this guy doesn't know how to play. And then I went on to lose that round. And once I lost that round, everything like that I knew, that everything that I practiced for just went out the window, because I just didn't know how to adjust to him. And it was frustrating, but I wasn't like, when I lost in Smash, I was really mad because I felt like it was out of my control what happened. Or at least more out of control than what happened in Street Fighter. But in Street Fighter, like, I know why I lost, and I am confident enough in my Street Fighter ability to know that, like, if I had prepared, better and played better, I could have beat that guy. But it's fine, like, it was my first Street Fighter tournament, and a lot of people in their first tournament, they go 0-2. So to go 1-2 is an accomplishment, and it's just like, if anything, it just got me and my friends more excited to keep playing. Like, we came back from Evo, like, we're just completely charged to, get good at the game. And, we've been, playing more sessions, and I've been playing online more. And, Jury came out today, so I was playing with her a little bit, and she's really fun.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what would have happened if you had practiced for 2 months or 3 months,
exactly.
Or not split your attention between, well, I know you said you didn't practice much on it, but playing 2 other fighting games at a tournament, kind of splits your mental focus also.
And,
or if you practice until next year.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows?
Right.
But I'm going to try to go to more local events in New York, and, I'm going to try to go to another tournament that's in New Jersey later this year. So, we'll see. It was fun. But what makes EVO, really fun, I would say, and why I would still recommend it to you, even if you're just have the most fleeting interest in fighting games, is that there's a sense of community. There's a sense of excitement from watching the matches. I don't even if for me, I had a lot of friends in the Smash community and some from the Street Fighter community and some even that I work with that were at EVO. So I got to connect with different people that I haven't seen in a long time or that I never got to meet in person. But for some of you guys, you might meet people that might be good friends or might become sparring buddies, or if you meet them at this tournament and you find out they're from your area and you just happen to, be at a gaming event or convention or something, you might recognize people. I always recognize people that I saw from that I've seen at Comic-Con, just randomly. But
cool.
It's good just for the community and the bonding aspect over fighting games. So, Patrick, I know you're new to it, and Julian, I know you're a vet, but I think that there's still reason to want to go. It's just a matter of, obviously getting the means to go, but I think it's worth it either way.
It's something that I still want to do, even if I don't participate, even if I just go to watch.
Going as a spectator is still great. You could still play friendlies. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But
that and California Extreme are 2 things that I really want to do at some point in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would like to get into it enough where I could actually play in the competitive realm.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm nowhere near that, so it would be fun to just watch and double it up with playing poker in Vegas.
But I mean, even I guarantee you, Patrick, there's probably people that entered EVO that are worse than that you're better than, because some a lot of people enter EVO just because they're there and they probably have friends there, but even if you do go 0-2, it's still exciting because when you lose, the guy who beat you, he's not most people that play these fighting games nowadays, they call it, there's a quote unquote competition epidemic going on in the FGC where everybody's too friendly and nobody's harsh enough. Or there's a loss of grit, so they call it friendly fighter 5. It's it's an in-community joke, but it's because everybody's more quick to be friendly about the game and friendly about conversation rather than popping off and trying to, there used to be a way that you antagonize people so they might want to come back and be better, like they used to do in the arcades, but now it's more about bringing everybody together. So it's if you lose, the guy who beat you is probably going to tell you, hey, you try to do this. Hey, look up this guy. He might help, or they might trade, gamer tags and they'll play, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah, it's still worth it. I definitely implore it. And then on top of that, just Vegas in general was, I had probably the best time of my life there. It was really great. And, there's a lot of EVO-related parties and events that happened. I got to, I met celebrities, the whole, so, on my way there, I don't know, do you guys watch Orange is the New Black by any chance? Or have you, so
my girlfriend
there's this Dominican girl on there, she's the leader of, the Dominican girls, she's slightly darker skinned or something. But we met her on the plane, before we boarded the plane to go. And that just by random. I was just yo, she looks like the girl from Orange is the New Black. And we asked and she was nice about it, whatever. While we were there, Lupe Fiasco, who's my personal favorite rapper, he's been affiliated with the fighting game community for a while, because he's a fan of it. And he was at this party, this event called Bar Fights. And which is pretty much it's a bar where they have fighting game setups and they have exhibition matches, but it's kind of like a lounge and you can hang out after the tournament. So I met him at that event because he just happened to be there, and he brushed up by me by accident, and I looked, I was starstruck for the first time in my life. I was like, oh my gosh. So I went up and talked to him, and that was cool. And then on the way back on the plane, we walked right by Jake the Snake Roberts, and we talked to him. Yeah, like he was just sitting there, and I was like, "You're Jake the Snake," and he was like, "Yep." And I was like, "Dude," like, because my friend in front of me, he's a big wrestling fan too. And I'm like, "Dude, it's Jake the Snake," and we shook his hand, and he was like, "Oh, you guys lose money in Vegas," because he has that raspy voice. Yeah. But I was just like, I can't believe it. Like we had the best luck in terms of celebrity, sightings this trip, and then
you left out the best one.
I did. Yeah, I met Yoshihiro Ono. Wow. That was dope. Cause so at that Bar Fights event that I was telling you about, like they had stations set up to play. So there was a lot of fighting game community people playing and stuff, and I was just hanging out. And then he just comes over and he's just watching everybody playing, he looked kind of like a madman because his hair was a little messy or whatever. But I was like, holy shit. Like everybody was just like, yo, cause like most of the people there were drunk as hell. But I'm like, dude, it's just Yoshihiro Ono, and everybody's like, oh, dude, and then they're taking selfies with him, and he had the Blanca, and it was nuts. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a really good time. And then there's other stories that I can't tell you about on here, but yeah, it was cool.
Afterward,
it wasn't too crazy. It was just like it's crazy, but yeah, like. Yeah.
So you planning on going back next year?
I want to, but I don't know if I can because of my job.
Right. Oh, yeah, you never know if you're going to be in crunch.
So it's
like
that, I can never I was told that next year is going to suck. So that's all I have to go by. But me and my other coworker who were at Evo were like, oh, like we're we were talking about possibly going next year. So it's not out of the cards. We'll see. I want to go next year if I can.
Confirmed on Nerds Without Pants, Rockstar's releasing Red Dead Redemption 2 next summer.
I legitimately don't know anything about that game.
No, I'm just, I wouldn't even try to get anything out of you.
I'm just saying it. But it's just a matter of when.
So just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. All right. Well, JD, that's awesome. Thank you for the report and everything. We're going to go ahead and do a lightning round of Chrono Crossing. So cue that music. Yeah, I almost feel a little bad because Chrono Crossing for 2010, it was a massive year. But I think we kind of might have covered a little bit of this at the beginning. And JD, I mean, let's face it, I know that you and I have the same game. So why don't you go ahead and kick it off? Because normally I would be going first on this one, but why don't you go ahead and start?
I actually prepared myself for you to take the first one.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, duh. It's Mass Effect 2.
Absolutely.
There's not even any question. Like, now I have said multiple times how disappointed I was in the gameplay of Mass Effect 2. That still holds. I think that what BioWare ended up doing, and I feel this is the EA influence, by the way, is they looked at all the stuff that was critiqued about or criticized about Mass Effect 1, and instead of fixing it and making it just work a little better, they just chunked it out the window and, replaced it with a subpar third-person shooter, which doesn't even really have, great shooting mechanics anyway. It's better than Mass Effect 1, but still nowhere near, a Gears of War or an Uncharted or anything like that. That being said, it's still a game about characters and moments, and, Mass Effect 2 has one of the greatest intros to a video game I've ever played. It also has the greatest final section of a video game I've ever played. The suicide mission, which is completely contingent on everything that you've done through the course of the game. If you decided to cut corners, people are going to die. If you decided to do things in a weird order, people are going to die. If you dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, people are going to come out okay. And, you know, I was, you know, people like overuse this word, but I was literally on the edge of my seat for that entire mission. I was so tense because I was like, every time there was a decision I would have to make, I was like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. What do I do here? Well, I need to put the controller down. I need to think about this. Hold on, which of course Shepard wouldn't have to do because Shepard is like a, you know, like get things done type of commander. But, you know, I had to put my controller down, make sure that like I was like really giving this a good like once over. But, yeah, just an excellent game. And again, like such a unique thing of taking your character and your decisions from the first game, importing that over to where there's certain segments and scenes that you may not see because you did something in Mass Effect 1 that, you know, that's no longer a thing. Like that character doesn't exist in your version of Mass Effect going into the second and third game. And that's just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still a phenomenal game. It's my third favorite in the series, but it's
also,
my favorite game of 2010.
Mission has one of the best pieces of music on the planet. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to know anything about Mass Effect. You hear that and you're like, oh, something's going down. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely. But, so I anticipated that you were going to pick Mass Effect 2, and I wrote down Mass Effect 2 as my number 1, but I also wrote down my number 2 in anticipation of that, and I felt like it was appropriate. So, just to quickly mention, honorable mention, War for Cybertron and
Sure.
Halo Reach. Both of those I really enjoyed. War for Cybertron I loved. Halo Reach I loved. But my pick was Super Street Fighter 4.
Wow.
Because Super Street Fighter 4 was the Street Fighter game where I actually where things started to go up a notch, because I had started playing Street Fighter, like learned how to play Street Fighter with Street Fighter 4, the original Street Fighter 4, but Super Street Fighter 4 is where I started to feel like I was getting good at it. And on top of that, the way that Street Fighter 4 was balanced was really exciting. Like, Chun-Li was a really good character in that game, but there were also a lot of other, like, you know, balance changes and additions that they made to Street Fighter 4 that made it significant. And I remember watching the tournaments were really exciting. Like the tournament that they had to bring in Street Fighter 4 was like just, you know, a standout. Like there was a really close match between Justin Wong and Daigo. And then on top of that, like I said, it's just like I actually felt like that game is where I went from just playing Street Fighter to like understanding, you know, the metagame a little bit and like actually getting into the Street Fighter, you know, series. So I have to give the edge to Super Street Fighter 4.
It's an interesting pick. Yeah, I vacillated between, like, I mean, well, not really. I mean, Mass Effect 2 was locked in. Like, I didn't have to look. But when I did look at the list, I was like, oh man, but Alan Wake was this year, and Super Street Fighter 4 was this year, and, you know, there were just like some great games, but, I mean, you know, Mass Effect 2 is one of my, I mean, if we were doing like a top 10, Mass Effect 2 might end up on that list. I'm not sure. But Angelo, how about you?
Come on.
For 2010?
Come on. What game came out this year that I talk about all the time?
Etrian Odyssey.
Etrian Odyssey
Well,
year?
okay. But only one game would really beat out Etrian Odyssey for me.
Nier?
Yeah.
Nier.
Oh, I thought Nier was older
this year,
than that.
2010.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Couldn't go an episode without it being mentioned.
No. And Etrian
I mean, we
Odyssey.
already
I got like a
mentioned it
double bonus, man. Yeah, the weird thing is I haven't managed to squeeze an Etrian Odyssey on this list, even though I played like so many of them, because every year that came out, something else came out that I was just like, "Whoa, that game is so good." But yeah, this year was Nier. And the only one that the other thing was 999 came out this year too. And I mean, it's just like, wow. But when it comes down to it, even though like the visual novel thing is not my favorite way to play a great story, so that's kind of why I gave it to Nier, even though Nier is still not the best action game on the planet. Like, really what I love about Nier is the story, and what I love about 999 is the story, because that's all it has. But Nier's just, they're both off the rails, crazy, fun, ridiculous stories, and that's why I like them so much. Which is weird because we're talking about games.
No, man. I mean, and Nier does some stuff from what I understand with like, combat, but also just like the New Game Plus thing, which is like almost insane. Where it's, the way that it locks away like so much of what that game is behind a second playthrough.
And a third playthrough even. Believe it or not. And then it makes you do something at the very end that's very, very, very... Games don't do the stuff that Nier does.
I want to know.
Not telling.
Tell me.
Nope.
Oh.
We'll do this sometime, but not today. And 999 is just a very good story, but Nier breaks the rules in a lot of ways, which is kind of why it gets the leg up.
I love that.
And sorry, Etrian Odyssey, I love you so much. Etrian Odyssey 3 was my first one, and that came out this year.
Oh, okay. So the potential of Etrian Odyssey games on Chrono Crossing has now ended.
It has. Unfortunately,
I'll remember that in the future.
And actually, this is so I'm done.
Yeah. I guess I went the opposite way in terms of a game of the year because for my games of all time, I was more, I guess, story driven than, or like I put them in for like nostalgic certain reasons. But for this, I was more like, this is the game that'll stand the test of the time, like competitively and all that, because StarCraft 2 came out in 2010, and like I played it the most, and also I think it's the game that'll stay the longest because you guys are all fucking Americans and you don't really get it.
You're American.
Nah.
Last I
He's
checked,
converted.
you were Korean.
Yeah, now that I mention it, I have converted.
It's all about League now.
It's that good. I don't know.
No, I'm joking.
I don't think so. Yeah, it's just the purest like rock paper scissors of our real time strategy games. I'm really excited about talking about StarCraft because I played hundreds of matches against people, and 1-on-1, 2-on-2 mostly, but you can go up to 4-on-4, and I can't even beat the single player on the second highest difficulty. It's so hard. It's just, it's mostly probably because I can't click the way that I want to click. And in the future, when we have better control schemes for real-time strategy, this game will be like, the dust will be bitten. But I think that we'll still be playing the same bare structure, the bones of like StarCraft in general, and that really is refined so much in the second one that I don't know why you would play any other game when you can play that.
Man, I'm still shocked at the Patrick StarCraft love out of nowhere. It.
Yeah.
It's like you have literally never mentioned StarCraft on any episode of Nerds Without Hands.
I'm just surprised that these are our picks in the year that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer came out.
Oh, hush.
That was such a great game.
Shit, I forgot about that.
Well, we had a couple entries via Twitter, which you can always submit those at NWPcast. Our trusty site director, Nick, says Super Mario Galaxy 2, which I have not played that one yet. I love the first Galaxy.
Yeah.
But normally I don't
made my short
normally
list.
I don't do like the honorable mentions, but just to like let people know like what a huge year 2010 was. He also mentions Super Meat Boy, 3D Dot Game Heroes, Crackdown 2, Red Dead Redemption, Bayonetta, Vanquish. Huge year for games.
2010 was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Mod Nation Racers.
Yeah. I mean, I meant to mention at the top of this, but okay, so I've kind of been phoning it in a little bit since we started Chrono Crossing, just because since 2010 I have been playing fewer and fewer games every year. But from this point on, it's on, because we're getting into the points where Julian was playing like pretty much every major release that came out every year. So like it's going to get crazy. I'm really excited for like 2009 down to 2000, and then the 90s are probably the thing I'm most excited for. But Casey also chimes in for Chrono Crossing and says, Mass Effect 2. If possible, this would be my game of the year every year you've covered so far. So
Nice.
And then over at pixelbit.com in the comments section, we have Night Driver who says 2010 is Fable 3 for me. I love the series, but this was a bit more actiony than I wanted in an RPG. I wanted more of Fable 2, but I liked it well enough. Yeah, I liked Fable 3 a lot. I know it's not a very popular thought, but I thought that Fable 3 fixed some of the things in Fable 2 that needed to be done, but then broke some of the stuff that Fable 2 did right, so it ended up being about equal as far as quality goes. When we get later on, it's going to be really hard for me not to pick Fable 2. But I think there's something better that came out that year. I'm going to have to go back and look. Transmet 2033 says, let's see. I knew this one immediately and still recall the moment that I saw the collector's edition of this game with the soundtrack on vinyl. I was going to wait on picking up BioShock 2 until I read a few reviews, but I saw the collector's edition and had to have it. That's an interesting one. I'm in the camp that thought that BioShock didn't need a sequel, and also that BioShock Infinite didn't need to be called BioShock Infinite.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I didn't like BioShock 2, but I didn't finish it.
Yeah, me neither.
Maybe I need to fix that.
I never finished it either, but I remember enjoying it, and then I just hit a point where I was like, okay, that's cool.
I think I'm going to start with the second one when I get the trilogy that's coming out for PS4.
That's a good idea.
Same here. I need to give it another chance because I remember I borrowed it from a friend of mine and I played it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to play as a big daddy. This is going to be awesome. And I remember not feeling like a big daddy at all.
Yeah, that's the exact thing.
And then just kind of tossing it at that point, being like, I don't want to play this. This is not... Maybe now that I'm prepared for not feeling like a big daddy, I will be able to appreciate the game, but I certainly did not when it came out.
Yeah, it's like you have the drill, and that's really cool, but you don't feel like this lumbering Hulk that's, I mean, think about how tough the big daddies were to take down in BioShock.
Right.
And then you just feel so not that in BioShock 2. But yeah, maybe if I just kind of divorce myself from that,
Maybe I'll never play it.
It's still worth playing.
It's a good game.
The mechanics are solid.
And the big sister fights are, they're really cool.
It's just like, and the story is actually kind of interesting too. Like, what I remember of it was good. It's just, I hit a point where it was like, oh, okay, I don't really need to finish this. Like, I think what really bothered me was the whole, escort the little sisters thing. Like, I forgot exactly what it was, but, like, there was one certain part where, I just got hung up on trying to escort the little sisters to do something, and it was just annoying, and I was like, okay, I'm done.
Oh, yeah, you have to defend them from the
yeah, that's probably what it was.
Dear video game designers, escort missions
and defend missions
Stop
too.
it.
It's just really, like,
yeah, same thing.
I will defend them in certain cases, but I also understand the argument against them. But we have one final entry from new listener Xrian, who says, I had to jump on the segment, so I'm picking Castlevania Legends of Shadow,
Lords.
No. Lords of Shadow. Thank you. He just put LOS.
Really?
For my Chrono Crossing 2010 pick. This is why I love this segment. I love it when we get like really like off the wall stuff like this.
Sure.
He says, there were some strong contenders, but I absolutely loved this one. It was a nice change from the more button masher games like God of War. Combat was great and required strategy. Also, the main voice actor was amazing. We also need more Scottish voice actors. He says, Too Bad 2 was a letdown, but that doesn't diminish my fond memories of 1. And I liked this game a lot. Angela, you and I were late to the party. We actually played this for an episode of a series of Backloggers Anonymous. And I remember coming away from it really liking it. I felt it was a little long, right? Like, wasn't that?
It dragged on a bit. But I remember thinking, man, I had gone into it like expecting it to suck, and it didn't suck.
Yeah.
And to the contrary, I did like it. Like, I went back and replayed some levels to like get some of the stuff I missed, which I don't usually do in games I don't like.
Yeah.
So
had a really cool ending. Like, that does, I haven't played the second one, but that bums me out if he's saying that it's kind of a letdown, because the way that, Lords of Shadow ends, it makes you really excited for a sequel.
It does.
So that's kind of a bummer to hear, but, great choice. I love Chrono Crossing.
Yeah, it's fun.
And it seems like you guys enjoy it too. And again, like, we want to get more people, in on this thing. Both this and Stage Select.
Did you guys know a reimagining of Symphony of the Night came out this year?
What do you mean?
Castlevania Puzzle Encore of the Night came out this year.
Oh.
You guys remember hearing about that?
No.
It was a Puzzle Quest style reimagining of Castlevania Symphony of the Night that came out for smartphones.
You get off this podcast.
I'm just mentioning that it happened. I have not played it.
It won't end with a bang, but with
exists.
a whimper.
Yeah, it's like the show's already
Sorry
too long,
about that.
then you have to interject that crap. But we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for listening to this very long episode of About Pants. Next episode, we will be chrono crossing to 2009. And our stage select will be picking our top 3 video game weapons of all time. If you want to participate in either of those sections or both, you can either hit us up on Twitter at NWPcast or over at pixelbit.com in the comments section of this episode you're listening to right now. JD, thanks for coming back on. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself at EVO.
Thank you.
And you can also find us on the Twitter, JD.
At a myth known as JD.
Patrick.
I'm at some boss.
Angelo.
At a roguish ham.
And you can find me at Julian_Titus. Let us know in the comments of what you thought of Stage Select. I realized that it was like twice as long as it's intended to be, but, it was the first one. We were excited. So let us know, and hopefully it was as much fun to listen to as it was to record. But until next time, for myself, JD, Patrick, and Angelo, thanks for listening, and keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.
Wake up in the morning feeling like Sea Viper. Choose a stage, I'm out the door, I'm gonna hit like a sniper. As I leave, I ignore creepy words from Hutcon. Now move out of the way, cause here comes Jory Han. I'm talking aerial diving kicks, trying out lots of tricks. My moves are all really sick. I'm talking zoning out your Hadokens, really not all that broken. Kenny, you must be joking. Don't stop, tiger shots, keep them coming, I can't block tonight. I'ma fight till my combo comes out right.